In a world where heroes rise and fall, the Academy stands as the ultimate proving ground. Among nobles, geniuses, and chosen prodigies, one boy is dismissed as ordinary. But behind those quiet eyes lies the soul of a legendary hero, a warrior reborn, carrying secrets too dangerous to reveal. This is the tale of Leo, the Academy honor student who defies fate itself, and begins a journey that will shake the world. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the stone courtyard. Leo stood there alone, gripping his sword, his footsteps steady and measured. In his mind, a quiet thought surfaced. Life is definitely better this time, but peace never lasts. From behind him came a sharp voice. His mother Reina stood there, tall, fierce, her crimson eyes glinting. Without warning, she drew her sword and charged. Steel clashed. Sparks flew. Leo blocked just in time, his arms shaking under the weight of her strike. She pressed forward, her blade swift and merciless. It wasn't just training, it was a test. The final test. Don't hesitate. She shouted between blows. You won't get anywhere if you keep doubting yourself. Leo gritted his teeth. He drew in a deep breath and stepped forward, unleashing all his strength in a single strike. Light burst through the air, his sword slicing with renewed determination. Reina's lips curled into a proud smile. Yes, that's it. But suddenly she felt the pressure of her own attack and thought, I might have gone too far. Leo was knocked to the ground, panting. And yet, instead of fear, a grin spread across his face. He stood up slowly and asked her if she wasn't being a little too harsh. Reina lowered her sword, her expression softening just slightly. She told him it wasn't because he was her son that she pushed him this hard. It was because she believed in him. And that was enough. Leo's resolve hardened. This was just the beginning. He would grow stronger, strong enough to stand as a true hero. Days later, in Delm Royal Academy, students filled the classroom as their teacher spoke passionately from the podium. We are living in the age of heroes, the teacher declared. 5,000 years ago, the first heroes appeared in our world. They were chosen through miracles, divine interventions. And among you, there will surely be future heroes recorded in the hero records. The class buzzed with excitement. But Leo sat near the window, his eyes fixed outside. The teacher noticed and called him out. If you know everything already, Pluv, answer this. How were heroes recognized 5,000 years ago? Leo turned his head slowly, his tone calm, almost indifferent. If you made a name for yourself, people acknowledged you, he said. The room fell quiet. Then a red-haired boy raised his hand, Gulliver Treddon, the Academy's star student. That's wrong, he said firmly. Heroes were chosen through sacred rituals. The teacher praised him while the class nodded. Leo simply closed his book and thought to himself, sacred rituals, huh? Back then, people must have really needed miracles. That day, excitement swept through the academy. The Zerzinger family is visiting. Students whispered. Celia Zerzinger is here. Everyone rushed to the windows, eager to catch a glimpse. But Leo rose from his seat and turned away. I'm going home, he said flatly, ignoring the commotion. Still, a faint smirk betrayed his curiosity. At home, his mother was waiting for him. She told him that the Zerzinger family would be staying at their estate, and that this was his chance to learn the Zerzinger aura techniques. Leo's crimson eyes lit up, but his mind was made up. He declared that he would enter Lumeran Academy this very year. Reina smiled at his determination. With their aura techniques, you'll be strong enough to pass without worry, she told him. But Leo only shook his head. He would pass on his own strength. That night, black carriages arrived at the Pluv estate. The guests stepped out, noble figures draped in fine cloaks. Among them was Celia Zerzinger herself, her green eyes sharp as blades. When she learned Leo still couldn't fully control his aura, a small mocking smile tugged at her lips. But Gia Zerzinger, head of the family, had a different opinion. I believe the boy has potential, he said. I'll personally test his ability. Leo felt the fire in his chest ignite. This was the chance he had been waiting for. He gripped his sword, his expression turning resolute. No words were needed, his eyes said it all. Whatever trial awaited him, he would face it head on. Because he wasn't just training anymore. He was preparing to prove himself. To everyone. The night had barely passed when the courtyard once again echoed with the sound of training. Leo stood with his sword in hand, sweat glistening under the moonlight. His body still ached from the relentless sparring with his mother, but his heart burned hotter than ever. Then she appeared, Celia Zerzinger. Her crimson eyes gleamed as she approached, her presence calm yet carrying the unmistakable weight of a noble knight. She studied him for a moment. Then, with a faint smirk, said something that changed the air around them. For 1 week, she would serve as his maid. Leo raised an eyebrow at the boldness of the declaration. But he didn't refuse. Instead, he took a step forward, sword at the ready, and said that if she was serious, then they should start right away. The tension between them snapped like a drawn BOWSTRING. Blades flashed. The sound of steel rang through the courtyard. Leo moved first, fast, decisive, pushing Celia back on her heels. But Celia was no ordinary opponent. She parried and spun, her aura flaring like a crimson flame, her strikes cutting through the air. Still, Leo's movements were sharper than before, his footwork carrying the weight of every lesson his mother had drilled into him. Celia felt herself gritting her teeth. He's fast. Too fast for someone who can't even use aura yet, but speed wasn't enough. She dashed forward, her own aura flaring bright, aiming to end the fight in one strike, yet Leo met her blow head-on, the clash exploding with a shockwave that sent dust and leaves swirling around them. Celia's eyes widened. What is this power? The duel grew more intense with each passing second. Leo's expression was calm, his gaze unwavering. He was no longer simply defending, he was driving her back, his sword striking with surgical precision. Then, with a deep breath, he shifted his stance and unleashed a strike so powerful that Celia felt the air split. She barely had time to cross her sword in defense before the impact sent her skidding backward across the courtyard. For the first time, she realized she might lose. Her pride refused to let her stop. Her aura flared once more, crimson light swirling around her like a storm, and she charged again. But Leo only tightened his grip and moved forward. When their swords met again, Celia felt the crushing weight of his determination. She faltered, and in that brief opening Leo struck. Her weapon was knocked aside. She fell to one knee, her breathing ragged. The courtyard went silent. Leo lowered his blade but did not gloat. He simply stood there, his eyes calm, as though this result had been inevitable from the start. Celia stared at him, her pride wounded but not broken. She rose to her feet and, with a quiet nod, acknowledged her defeat. Later that evening, the Plov estate was filled with guests from the Zerzinger family. G.S. Zerzinger, Celia's uncle, arrived with his usual commanding presence, his sharp gaze scanning Leo with interest. When he learned that Leo had bested Celia without even using aura, his expression shifted, surprise, then curiosity, and finally a hint of a smile. "This boy might be more than I expected," he murmured. He stepped forward, offering his hand and a formal greeting, but his words carried more weight than mere politeness. He was testing Leo, his resolve, his pride. Leo met his gaze without hesitation. Jay spoke of offering a reward in exchange for breaking the agreement with Celia, suggesting that she need not fulfill her promise of serving as Leo's maid. But Leo refused. "This is between Celia and me," he said firmly. "She made a promise, and promises must be kept." Gia's expression hardened for a moment, then softened into something like respect. This boy, this heir of the Plov family, would not be bought. Not even by a Zerdinger. Even when Gias offered to teach him the family's aura cultivation technique, Leo turned him down, saying it felt wrong to accept it as hush money, as though his victory had been a fluke. That answer seemed to amuse Gias even more. The man's lips curled into a smile and he leaned closer, whispering that Leo had guts. Then, with a nod, he ordered that Celia fulfill her promise as agreed. The decision shocked everyone, even Celia herself, but the order was final. As the sun set, Leo stood in the courtyard once again, his figure framed by the warm glow of dusk. He had won more than just a duel. He had won recognition. And yet, in his heart, he knew this was just the beginning. Far away, the academy gates of Lumerin awaited him. New challenges, new rivals, and far greater battles were coming. For Leo Plov, the boy who refused to bow, the road to becoming a true hero was only just beginning. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of the Plov estate, bathing the hall in soft gold. Leo sat calmly in a chair, a book open in his hands, when the sound of soft footsteps approached. Celia entered, dressed not in her usual training attire, but in a perfectly fitted maid outfit. Her crimson eyes flickered with pride, embarrassment, and defiance all at once. Leo glanced up from his book, his expression calm, but his lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "It suits you," he said, his voice quiet yet certain. "The elegant style matches you perfectly." Celia froze, her cheeks warming ever so slightly. "I know I'm beautiful," she stammered, "but saying it so casually feels strange." Leo shrugged, returning his gaze to the book. "I didn't mean to offend. Just speaking the truth." The tension broke with an almost comical air. But it wouldn't last. After breakfast, Leo stood in the courtyard, wooden training sword in hand. "Shall we start?" he asked, his voice carrying across the stone floor. Celia joined him, determination burning in her eyes. "I'll uncover your secret," she declared fiercely. "Young master or not, I'll see what you're hiding." And so their training began. Day after day, Celia sparred against Leo, only to find herself on the ground, panting and frustrated. Leo's style was sharp and unrelenting, his footwork precise, his attacks designed to exploit the smallest openings. "When your stamina runs out, your guard falters," he said one morning as Celia sat, catching her breath. "You expose your back just like this." His tone was not mocking, but instructive, almost like a teacher's. Celia clenched her fists, teeth grinding. How dare he talk to me like I'm a novice? But deep down, she knew he was right. Each defeat only fueled her more. She would rise again, charging with everything she had, only to be parried and sent sprawling. Her pride screamed, but so did her fighting spirit. "Don't underestimate me," she roared during one particularly fierce spar, lunging forward with all her strength. Leo met her strike head-on, his blade knocking hers aside with a single, clean motion. This time she stayed down longer, staring up at the sky, sweat dripping from her chin. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her body trembling. Leo stepped forward, holding something out. "A bracelet," he said simply. She looked at it, confused. "It's enchanted with weight magic." "Wear it during training." His voice was calm, but there was a trace of challenge there. Her eyes widened. This wasn't mercy, it was a test. And she wasn't about to fail. The next morning, Celia strapped the bracelet to her wrist. The added weight made every movement harder, every swing slower. Her muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. Slowly, day by day, she began to move faster, her strikes growing sharper, her breathing more controlled. In the quiet of the evenings, Leo returned to his room and his books. Among them were countless volumes on the hero of beginnings, the legendary figure he had admired since childhood. Celia noticed, curiosity getting the better of her. "You really like that hero, don't you?" she asked one afternoon. Leo closed the book gently, his eyes distant. "I suppose I do. There's something about him, the way he fought against fate itself, that resonates with me." Celia tilted her head, unsure why she felt a pang of respect for him at that moment. Days passed, and the week of training was nearly at an end. Celia's respect for Leo had grown, though she would never admit it aloud. Every defeat, every correction he gave her, forged her into something stronger. And then, one quiet evening, Leo stood in the courtyard, gripping his sword with renewed determination. He wasn't just training Celia, he was preparing himself. Because a new challenge awaited. Word had arrived that the Lumaran Academy entrance exam was near. And for Leo, this wasn't just an exam, it was the first step toward something greater. As the scene faded, the camera would linger on Leo's determined expression. Celia watching him from a distance, her crimson eyes thoughtful. The training grounds dissolved into golden light as the hero record opened. Leo felt the strange sensation wash over him. This wasn't just a simulation. This was a world, a perfectly recreated battlefield drawn from the memories of past heroes. He stood among other students as the professor's voice echoed, "Welcome to the Forest of Beasts." Trees stretched high into the sky, their shadows dancing eerily in the sunlight. But this was no ordinary forest. It was the place where the Beast Queen had once ruled, and where countless warriors had fallen. Some students trembled, their courage already wavering. "This is scary," one whispered. "I want to go back." Another cried, clutching his sword. Leo's crimson eyes glinted. "It's just an illusion." "Pathetic," he muttered. But deep down, he knew better. A warning rang out. This world is not fake. Everything that happens here is real. If you face a life-threatening situation and fail, you truly will die. The tension sharpened instantly. The air felt heavier, almost suffocating. Suddenly, a green flash ripped through the forest. A spell. Leo moved instinctively, stepping aside as wind magic sliced into the ground where he had stood just moments ago. From the shadows stepped a figure, Awad Lulan, his long silver hair glistening in the faint light. His eyes were cold, confident, as if he already owned the battlefield. "I'm glad I get to take down someone from the Zerdinger family so soon," Awad said with a mocking smile. Leo shook his head slightly. "You've got it wrong. I'm from the Plov family." "Doesn't matter," Awad replied, raising his weapon as a circle of wind gathered behind him. "You were with Celia earlier, that's reason enough." The two clashed. Awad's magic was fast, sharp, slicing wind like spinning blades, but Leo's movements were calm, almost too calm. He sidestepped with perfect timing, his wooden practice sword coming up to block at the last possible second. "You're calm," Awad said, irritation flickering in his eyes. "Even when I'm right in front of you." "Are you mocking me?" "No," Leo said, voice steady. "Your spell is too simple." Awad's smirk turned into a scowl. "Then let's see you handle something more serious." With a shout, he unleashed a barrage of wind spells, wind sickle, wind arrow, filling the clearing with deadly green light. But something strange happened. His attacks vanished, cut off mid-air as if they were swallowed by nothingness. Awad's expression twisted. "Where did it go? I can't sense any mana. Why?" Before he could react, Leo closed the distance. His movements were a blur, faster than anyone thought possible. With a single clean strike, he disarmed Awad and sent him sprawling to the ground. Awad's eyes widened in shock. His magic hadn't even had time to form. Leo stood over him, breathing evenly. "Considering your power, your attack was too monotonous. You rely too much on your magic." Rage flared in Awad's gaze. "Are you lecturing me?" A direct descendant of the Llewellyn family. Leo's expression didn't change. "And learn from this. This is how you deal with a simple attack." He struck once more, precise, unrelenting, forcing Awad to his knees. The duel ended before it had truly begun. Awad clenched his fists, humiliated. The forest fell silent except for the rustle of leaves in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, the exam overseers nodded. The first real clash of the test had been decided, and it was clear who stood on top. Leo turned away, his red eyes narrowing. This is just the beginning, he thought. If this test is about survival, I'll survive, and I'll take the highest score. But as he stepped deeper into the forest, a strange chill ran down his spine. Somewhere nearby, Celia shivered too. Something or someone was watching them both. The forest was unnervingly quiet. Leo suddenly stopped, his crimson eyes narrowing. His hand shot out, stopping Chelsea in her tracks. "Wait," he said. At their feet lay a corpse, shriveled, dried out as though every drop of life had been sucked away. Chelsea bent down, horrified. "It's like a mummy." Leo's gaze darkened. "I've seen something like this before. This isn't just a simple beast attack. Something is draining everything alive in this forest." The ground trembled. A low hum reverberated through the air, making the leaves quiver. Leo's thoughts sharpened. He understood the meaning of this test now. This isn't just about survival. They want to see who can adapt to the worst possible situation. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows, other students were on the move. The red-haired boy, Leo's rival, smirked. "I'll kill Chelsea Llewellyn first. Then that guy next to her will be nothing." But before he could act, the night shifted. The moonlight dimmed as a chilling aura spread through the forest. The boy froze. The pressure in the air was suffocating. As if something colossal had just woken up. From deep within the trees came a guttural roar that shook the earth. The weaker students nearly collapsed in fear. Leo, however, didn't flinch. His voice cut through the panic. "If you keep fighting each other, you'll all die here. From now on, we work together." Chelsea hesitated, but seeing the calm in his eyes, she nodded. "All right, I'll follow your lead." The others were too stunned to argue. Leo's presence was commanding, his tone didn't allow for dissent. Then the forest split open. A monstrous figure emerged, towering over them, its eyes glowing crimson. Its claws were long enough to rip through trees like paper. This was no ordinary beast. This was the apex predator of the hero record, a nightmare-given form. Fear washed over everyone. Leo took a step forward, wooden sword at the ready. His expression didn't change, but his aura of resolve filled the air. "This will be my first real achievement here," he thought. "And I'll make sure it counts." As the monster's roar echoed, Leo raised his weapon and stood between it and the others. The scene froze there, a perfect moment of stillness before the storm. The chapter ended, with the shadow of the beast looming over Leo, promising that the next clash would shake the entire forest. The forest was shrouded in a deathly silence, broken only by the faint whisper of wind brushing through twisted branches. The ground beneath them was soft, damp, as if it had absorbed too much blood and fear over the years. Leo stood at the front, his crimson eyes scanning the darkness ahead. His fingers tightened around his weapon as he felt the air grow heavier. Chelsea, slightly behind him, held her breath, her silver hair glinting faintly under the pale moonlight. Every shadow felt alive, every rustle carried danger. Then it came. The ground trembled. A monstrous silhouette crawled out from the mist. Chelsea's heartbeat spiked. That's the Spider Princess. Tarantula. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the fear it carried was enough to chill the bones. The creature's many eyes glowed like lanterns in the night, its fangs dripping with venom. Its massive legs dug deep into the soil as it let out a shrill, ear-piercing screech that shook the air. Leo didn't flinch. His expression remained calm, even cold. So this is what we're dealing with. Before Chelsea could react, the first strike came, fast, vicious. The ground exploded under the force as the monster's legs smashed down, barely missing them. Chelsea! Focus! Leo's voice was sharp, commanding. She bit her lip and raised her hands, chanting softly. The wind gathered around her, swirling into sharp, glowing blades. Wind Fang! The attack shot forward like a storm of emerald light, tearing through the darkness and slamming into the monster. Its body jerked back with a deafening shriek, but when the smoke cleared, the tarantula was still standing. Its wound glowed a sickly green and began to heal right before their eyes. Chelsea's breath hitched. It's regenerating so fast. Beside her, their companion frowned. It will just keep healing until we run out of mana. Leo's lips curled into a thin, dangerous smile. Then we don't give it time to heal. He stepped forward, each movement calm but filled with lethal intent. His voice dropped low, steady as stone. Two of you prepare a killing strike. I'll hold it off. Chelsea's eyes widened. That's suicide. You don't even use aura. I know, Leo replied without hesitation, crimson eyes gleaming. But I can buy you 5 minutes. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Chelsea hesitated, her hands trembling. She wanted to argue, to stop him, but there was no time. The monster lunged again. Venom spraying from its fangs. Leo moved first. His body blurred, his sword flashing under the moonlight as he intercepted the strike. The impact sent shockwaves through the clearing, forcing him to slide back, his boots digging into the ground. Now! He shouted. Chelsea gritted her teeth, gathering every ounce of wind mana she could muster. A swirling cyclone formed around her, tearing leaves from the trees. Her eyes glowed bright as she prepared her strongest spell. The other mage raised her staff, fire blazing at the tip, the ground around them glowing with red runes. The tarantula roared, enraged. Its monstrous legs thrashed, shaking the earth, trying to crush Leo under its weight, but he didn't falter. He dodged, parried, slashed, every movement buying just a few more seconds. And then now! Chelsea screamed. Both spells were unleashed at once. A massive storm of wind and fire collided, merging into a single devastating blast that struck the tarantula dead center. The explosion lit up the entire forest, blindingly bright. A roar that drowned every other sound. When the dust settled, the creature lay still. Its massive body twitched once, and then collapsed completely, black ichor seeping into the ground. Leo exhaled slowly, lowering his sword. His face was calm, but his shoulders trembled ever so slightly. Chelsea ran forward, her eyes wide. Are you hurt? He glanced at her and smirked. Just a scratch, but his eyes softened as he looked at the two mages. We work together, we survive. That's all there is to it. The night fell quiet again, the forest holding its breath after the chaos. But somewhere in the distance, a deeper, more sinister presence stirred, watching. Leo turned his gaze toward the darkness, a faint smile playing at his lips. This isn't over. Not yet. The forest had finally fallen silent. The cool night breeze swept through the clearing, carrying with it the stench of blood and damp earth from the carcass of the giant tarantula that lay sprawled across the ground. Leo slowly slid his sword back into its sheath. His chest rose and fell heavily, but there was a calm expression on his face. Did I really hold out for 5 whole minutes? He wondered for a brief moment. His heart was still pounding. Yet a faint smile crept across his lips, the pride of surviving this deadly trial warming him from the inside. Chelsea ran over to him, her silver hair shining in the moonlight, her face a mixture of worry and admiration. Leo, that was amazing! You were incredible! She exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. Beside her, the other girl, who tried to remain calm but was clearly impressed, nodded slightly. To last that long alone against a monster like that? It's not something just anyone could do. Leo gave them a small, amused smile. Is that so? I didn't think it was that impressive. Chelsea wouldn't let it go. No, you distracted a giant tarantula all by yourself for a full minute. You have to teach me how you did that. Just then, something caught Leo's eye, a glimmer on the ground. He stepped closer and reached for it. A faint golden light floated upward as if calling to him. When he opened his palm, a delicate ring shimmered into existence, the ring of life. He studied it closely, and in that instant, The entire clearing was bathed in warm golden light. From within that glow appeared a tiny, graceful figure, a fairy prince with radiant wings. Prince Sylve, Leo whispered softly, a note of nostalgia in his voice. Do you remember me? I am Kyle. The prince closed his eyes, then slowly nodded. He remembered. The golden light brightened even further, brushing against Leo's hand before fading away. Leo stared at the ring for a moment, then smiled faintly to himself. So, you became the Fairy King. This ring would amplify his mana and help him stabilize the strange power in his left eye. After a moment of silence, Leo took a deep breath and stood tall. With this, he murmured, I can keep standing in this world. By morning, the Academy's grand hall was packed with students. The massive screen above them showed scenes from the forest trial, every clash, every moment of struggle. Most of the students had been eliminated. Only 50 remained. Among the teachers, a tense silence filled the room. Professor Albee stood with his arms crossed, his cold eyes fixed on the screen. If they fail to meet my standards, I am prepared to let them all go, he said flatly. The other instructors exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew just how brutal this test had been. Finally, the names of the successful students were announced. The room grew so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. When the final name was called, murmurs broke out among the crowd. Celia? No, Leo. And then, Leo's image appeared on the massive screen, standing tall, composed, his crimson eyes calm as ever. He had passed. The elderly headmaster allowed a faint smile. So this is the boy Albee spoke so highly of, he said. Professor Albee narrowed his eyes, speaking only one line, Leo Pluv. He carries the qualities of a true hero. The hall fell silent again. Everyone now understood. A new star had risen in the academy. The morning sun shone brightly over the bustling port town. Merchants shouted their last calls, wagons rattled across the cobblestone streets, and somewhere among the crowd, a young boy with silver hair was making his way to a small shop tucked between tall brick buildings. Leo pushed the wooden door open, the little bell chiming softly. Inside, the warm scent of parchment and leather filled the air. An older man behind the counter glanced up, a faint smile on his lips. Congratulations on passing the entrance exam, he said, his tone calm but proud. I knew you would succeed, Leo nodded, but his eyes wandered across the bookshelves. Something about this place felt heavier than usual, as though the air itself held secrets waiting to be uncovered. He noticed a black, ancient-looking grimoire sitting on a high shelf. The moment he reached for it, another stack of books tumbled down, scattering across the floor. TK. He bent down to gather them, but before he could stand, the door opened again. Oh! A soft voice rang out. A boy with pale hair and sharp blue eyes stood there, clutching a rolled-up parchment. They locked eyes for a second, an awkward silence passing between them before the boy bowed politely. Sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going, Leo didn't reply. He simply placed the books back and walked past him, but something about that boy's presence lingered in his mind. As he stepped outside, he noticed a poster pinned to a wall nearby. It was a portrait, the same boy listed as Clover Myler, freshman at Lumen Academy. When Leo finally reached home, Chelsea was waiting with her hands on her hips. You took forever. We have uniforms to buy and so many things to prepare for before departure. Leo sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. I had to meet Uncle Z's. It took longer than expected. Chelsea opened her mouth to scold him but stopped mid-sentence as she saw something strange. Fire danced along Leo's hand. It wasn't just a spark of magic. It was as though the flames were alive, swirling around him with an almost divine brilliance. Is this how I use it? Leo whispered to himself, feeling the surge of power rush through him. Chelsea's eyes widened. No way. Leo clenched his fist and the fire vanished. Chelsea's heart pounded. This wasn't normal mana. This was something far more advanced, a power that usually took knights years to master. It took me 3 years to learn that control technique, she muttered under her breath. Her gaze locked on Leo's crimson eyes. What are you? She finally asked out. Leo didn't answer. He only smiled faintly and walked toward the window. Days later, the harbor was alive with noise as dozens of students gathered. A massive ship, its sails gleaming white under the sun, stood proudly at the dock. Whoa. It's huge. Chelsea gasped as they approached. A rugged man with silver-streaked hair stood at the gangway, his voice booming. Freshman of Lumen Academy. I am Professor Ain Ilandale, the one in charge of your training. His presence was enough to silence the crowd. He raised one arm and shouted, We depart now. Everyone board the ship. The students filed in, excitement and nerves mixing in the air. Once aboard, the deck buzzed with chatter. Leo found a quiet corner gazing at the endless ocean. Hey there! Leo turned to see a cheerful boy with light brown hair and a broad grin. The name's Car Thomas from the Kingdom of Nadra. Mind if I join you? Before Leo could answer, Chelsea appeared, crossing her arms. What couple? She barked when Car made a teasing comment. Car just laughed awkwardly. I didn't mean it like that. Soon, the conversation shifted to the ship itself and their destination. The students relaxed, enjoying the ocean breeze until a sudden crash echoed from the starboard side. The deck shook violently. Water erupted as a massive dark tentacle slammed down, splintering wood and sending crates flying. What the hell? Someone screamed. The peaceful voyage had turned into chaos. More tentacles rose from the sea, lashing across the deck. Students scrambled to avoid being crushed, some drawing their weapons, others frozen in fear. Professor, please help. A terrified student cried, but Professor Ain didn't move. Instead, he raised his wineglass calmly and took a sip. You are all Lumen Academy students, candidates to become heroes, he said coldly. When there is danger, you must overcome it yourselves. The students stared in shock, but there was no time to argue. The creature was fully emerging now, its grotesque body towering over the ship. Leo stepped forward, crimson eyes gleaming. His grip tightened around his sword. Then I guess it's up to us. The wind howled. The sea roared. And as the monster let out a bone-chilling screech, Leo charged forward, the battle for survival about to begin. The storm raged across the open sea, but the real storm was on the deck of the ship. Tentacles crashed down like whips, splintering the wood and sending students sprawling. Screams and panicked shouts filled the air. Leo stood firm, his crimson eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. If this continues, the ship will sink before we even reach Lumen. Chelsea stood beside him, wind magic coiling around her hands. Leo, what do we do? He didn't hesitate. We fight. With that, he dashed forward. His blade flashed, severing one of the massive tentacles cleanly. The creature howled, its rage echoing over the waves. The other students were still frozen, watching him in shock. Get up, Leo barked. This is a real battle, not training. His voice jolted them back to life. One by one, they began to summon their magic. Arrows of fire and blades of wind filling the air. But the monster was relentless. Another tentacle slammed down, narrowly missing Car Thomas as he scrambled backward. This thing is insane. He shouted. How are we supposed to kill it? Leo's gaze sharpened. It's core. Look for the core. The students' attacks intensified, driving the creature back. Chelsea's wind magic sliced open one of the massive limbs, revealing a faint glow within its flesh. There! Leo shouted without hesitation. He leapt high, landing on the monster's thrashing body. The deck lurched beneath him, but he kept his balance. He raised his sword, focusing every ounce of strength into a single strike. Fall! The blade came down like a flash of lightning. The creature let out one final, ear-splitting scream before collapsing into the waves, its dark blood staining the ocean red. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a cheer went up from the students. We did it! It's dead. But Leo didn't celebrate. He simply wiped the monster's blood from his sword and sheathed it again. His expression calm. From the upper deck, Professor Ain finally stood, his wineglass still in hand. Not bad, he said with a faint smirk. For a group of first years. The students glared at him, but they couldn't deny the pride swelling in their chests. They had survived on their own. Days later, the ship finally reached Lumen's grand port. The city stretched out before them like a jewel, towering spires, glittering canals, and the shining academy that sat on the highest hill. Leo's eyes lingered on it, his grip tightening slightly. This is where it begins. Inside the academy, the first assembly was held. The hall was massive, filled with hundreds of new students. The air buzzed with tension as the headmaster stepped onto the stage. Welcome to Lumen Academy, he said, his voice commanding silence. You are the chosen few, those who survived the first test. But remember this, your journey has only just begun. One by one, the students' names were called. Then, Leo Plov. Murmurs spread across the hall as Leo stepped forward, his crimson eyes steady. The headmaster's gaze softened slightly. You will serve as the freshman representative, he announced. Gasps filled the hall. Chelsea's mouth fell open. That means... Yes, another student whispered. He'll be the one who speaks at the entrance ceremony. Leo said nothing. He simply bowed his head slightly, then turned to face the hall full of students. This academy will forge us into something stronger, he said, his voice calm but filled with quiet power. Whether we rise or fall. That's up to us. The hall went silent. Even the most arrogant noble students found themselves unable to meet his gaze. And in that moment, everyone understood Leo Plov was no ordinary freshman. He was someone who would change the academy and perhaps the entire kingdom. The grand hall of Lumen Academy was still buzzing with whispers as Leo stepped down from the stage. Being chosen as the freshman representative had set the entire school talking, some with admiration, others with envy. Chelsea hurried after him, her silver hair swaying as she caught up. "I still can't believe it," she said breathlessly. "Out of everyone here. They chose you." Leo didn't slow down. "It doesn't matter," he replied evenly. "What matters is what I do next." As they made their way through the crowded corridors, the gazes of other students followed them, some curious, some hostile. Among the crowd, a tall boy with an arrogant smirk stepped forward, blocking their path. "So, you're the freshman representative?" he said, his tone mocking. "You don't look like much." Chelsea immediately stepped in front of Leo, glaring. "Move!" The boy only laughed. "Touchy, aren't we?" "I'm just saying, the academy must have really lowered its standards." Leo's crimson eyes locked on him, cold and sharp. "If you have a problem," he said calmly, "settle it in the arena." The boy sneered. "Gladly." Later that day, the training arena was packed with students eager to see the confrontation. The instructor overseeing the session sighed. "If you two insist on this, fine." A simple sparring match, first to land a decisive hit wins. Chelsea crossed her arms, clearly annoyed. "You're wasting your time." "Leo, he's not worth it." But Leo simply stepped into the circle, drawing his practice sword. "I don't fight for him," he said quietly. "I fight to prove I belong here." The match began. The boy charged first, his blade flashing. His movements were quick, precise, clearly trained, but Leo sidestepped effortlessly, his counterattack forcing the boy to stumble back. Gasps rippled through the watching students. The boy snarled and attacked again, faster this time, aura flaring around him. But Leo's eyes glinted, his sword cutting through the air with perfect timing. Clang! In a single, clean motion, Leo disarmed him. The boy's sword went flying, clattering against the far wall. For a moment, silence filled the arena. Then, slowly, the murmurs began. He beat him without even using aura. "Who is this guy?" The boy stood frozen, his pride shattered. Leo simply lowered his weapon and turned away. "I told you," he said over his shoulder, his voice calm but cutting. "If you have a problem, settle it here." Now it's settled. After the match, Chelsea caught up to him, a hint of a smile on her lips. "You know," she said, "you're starting to act like a real hero." Leo didn't respond right away. He looked toward the distant academy tower, the sunlight glinting off its spire. "A hero." He murmured. "No, not yet." But deep inside, he felt it. The first spark of something greater. This chapter flows directly from chapter 9, showing Leo's rise in status, the tension with other students, and his first real duel at the academy, solidifying his reputation. The clash in the training arena had changed everything. Word of Leo's victory spread quickly through the academy. Some students watched him with newfound respect, others with jealousy burning in their eyes, but Leo remained calm. He didn't care about whispers or stares. His focus was already on what came next. The next day, the first formal combat lesson began. The students gathered in the wide stone-paved arena under the bright morning sun. The instructor, a stern woman with sharp eyes, surveyed them coldly. "Today, you will spar against each other," she said. "Real combat experience is the only way to grow. Pair up now." Immediately, the students began forming pairs. Chelsea approached Leo, her expression bright. "Want to team up?" she asked. But before Leo could answer, another student stepped forward, a tall, dark-haired boy with a confident smirk. "No, I'll take him," the boy said, pointing at Leo. "I've heard the rumors." "Let's see if they're true." The instructor nodded. "Fine, step into the circle." The fight began. The boy was fast, faster than most students Leo had seen so far. He closed the distance in an instant, aura flaring around his blade, but Leo's crimson eyes glinted. He sidestepped smoothly, letting the attack pass by, then countered with a sharp, precise strike that forced the boy back. The spectators gasped. The boy snarled and attacked again, faster, harder. Sparks flew as blades clashed, the sound of metal ringing through the arena, but Leo was calm, too calm. He read every move, every opening, his body moving with mechanical precision, and then, with a single decisive motion, he disarmed his opponent. The boy's weapon spun through the air and clattered to the ground. The arena went silent. Leo lowered his sword, his breathing steady. "You rely too much on aura," he said quietly. Strength is meaningless without control. The boy's face flushed with humiliation. He clenched his fists but said nothing. The instructor's stern expression softened just a fraction. Winner, Leo Pluv. Later, as the students left the arena, Chelsea caught up to Leo. "You're incredible," she said, unable to hide her admiration. "No one can keep up with you," Leo shook his head. "It's not enough yet." Chelsea tilted her head. "Not enough? You beat everyone so easily." Leo's gaze turned distant, his voice low. "Low. There are people out there far stronger than this. If I can't close that gap, I'll be left behind." Chelsea's expression softened. She didn't know who he was thinking about, but she could tell there was weight behind those words. That night, Leo returned to his room. The dormitory was quiet, moonlight spilling through the window. He sat at his desk, staring at the ring on his finger, the ring of life. He closed his eyes, feeling the flow of mana through his body, stabilizing, growing stronger. "This is only the beginning," he murmured outside. The academy was silent, but somewhere in the shadows unseen eyes were watching, plotting, and Leo knew the real trials were still to come. The next morning, the academy courtyard buzzed with excitement. Today marked the start of the first official group training, a simulated expedition into a dungeon-like battlefield created by the Hero Record. Itself. Leo stood silently among the gathered students, arms crossed. The golden insignia on his chest marked him as the freshman representative, but he showed no sign of pride or arrogance. Professor Ain's booming voice echoed across the courtyard. "Listen well. Today, you will be divided into parties and sent into a Hero Record simulation. Your goal is simple: survive and return. Those who fail will not be allowed to continue to the next stage." Murmurs spread through the crowd. The pressure was heavy. Chelsea glanced at Leo. "Are you ready?" she asked. Leo's crimson eyes glinted. "Always." Moments later, the world shifted. The golden light swallowed them whole, and when it faded, they were no longer in the academy. Instead, they stood in the middle of a vast, desolate battlefield. The sky above was crimson, cracked like shattered glass. The wind carried the smell of blood. "Welcome to the ruined plains," Professor Ain's voice echoed faintly in their ears. This was once the site of a great war, and where a hero fell. The students tightened their grips on their weapons. "Form your parties." Ain barked. Chelsea immediately moved to Leo's side, as did Carr and two other students. Together, they formed a group of 5. Their first enemy appeared minutes later, a twisted beast. Its form barely human, its claws dripping with black ichor. "Get ready," Chelsea shouted, conjuring wind blades. Leo moved first, his body a blur. His sword cleaved through the creature's arm. Dark blood sprang across the ground. But then more appeared, a whole pack of them. Crawling from the ground like a nightmare-given form, the battle erupted. Chelsea's wind magic tore through the horde. Carr's spear skewered another. And Leo danced through the battlefield, each strike precise, each movement calculated. But the monsters were endless. "They just keep coming," Carr yelled. Leo's expression hardened. "Then we push forward. If we stay here, we'll be overrun." The group fought their way through, slowly but surely carving a path deeper into the ruined plains. Every step was a struggle, but Leo's presence kept them steady. Finally, they reached the heart of the battlefield. A massive shadow loomed before them, a giant, armored knight with a skull-like helm, its weapon a greatsword taller than a man. "That's—" Chelsea's voice faltered. "The fallen hero," Leo said quietly. The creature let out a hollow roar, the air vibrating with its fury. "Everyone, fall back," Leo commanded. But the monster charged, impossibly fast for its size. Its sword slammed into the ground, sending a shockwave that threw the students off their feet. Leo rolled to his feet, blood trickling from his lip. "Carr, protect the mages." "Chelsea, keep it distracted." "And you?" Chelsea shouted. Leo's crimson eyes blazed. "I'll find an opening." The battle raged. Chelsea's wind magic created a whirlwind barrier, slowing the knight's strikes. Carr parried a blow that nearly crushed one of their allies. Then, there it was. Leo darted in, slipping past the knight's guard. His sword glowed faintly as he poured every ounce of strength into a single strike. The blade pierced through the knight's chest. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, the creature let out a final, echoing scream before shattering into shards of light. The battlefield grew still. Leo stood there, breathing heavily, his crimson eyes locked on where the knight had fallen. Chelsea approached, her expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "You did it." Leo didn't smile. "No," he said quietly. "We did it." The world began to dissolve. golden light swallowing them once again. When they opened their eyes, they were back in the academy courtyard. Professor Ain nodded slightly, his usual smirk replaced by a rare look of approval. You survived, good, but don't relax, this was just the first step. Greater trials await. Leo looked up at the academy tower in the distance. Let them come, he thought. I'll overcome them all. The golden light faded, and once again the students stood in the academy courtyard. Some were cheering. Some simply collapsed to their knees in relief, and others were shaking in silent exhaustion. But Leo didn't look tired, his crimson eyes were still sharp. His breathing steady. Professor Ain surveyed the group, his arms crossed. Half of you would be dead right now if this had been a real battlefield, he said bluntly. Remember this. Hesitation gets you killed. His words silenced the crowd. Then, with a dismissive wave, he turned away. That's all for today. Dismissed. Later that afternoon, Chelsea and Carr sat with Leo under the shade of an old tree near the courtyard. I still can't believe you managed to land the finishing blow on that night, Carr said, shaking his head. You didn't even look scared. Leo didn't answer immediately. He stared at the ground, his hand resting on the ring of life. It wasn't about fear, he said finally. It was about timing. If I'd missed that strike, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Chelsea gave him a small smile. But you didn't miss. Before Leo could reply, the sound of approaching footsteps made them turn. Clover Myler stood there, his calm blue eyes fixed on Leo. You're strong, Clover said simply. Leo raised an eyebrow. And? Clover's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. And I look forward to surpassing you. Without waiting for a reply, Clover turned and walked away, leaving behind an unspoken challenge. Chelsea frowned. He's weird. Leo watched Clover's retreating figure. No, he said quietly. He's dangerous. That night the academy's training grounds were bathed in moonlight. Leo stood alone, practicing his sword swings over and over, sweat dripping down his face. His mind replayed the battle again and again. The monsters. The fallen hero, every strike, every mistake. I need to be faster, he muttered. Stronger. His left eye glowed faintly as the power within him stirred. Responding to his determination. And somewhere deep within the academy, a shadowed figure watched him from afar. So, the hero's successor really is among them. The figure whispered. The next morning, the academy gathered once again for the announcement of the rankings. The air was electric with tension. Professor Ain stood before them, reading from a scroll. The top 5 performers of this trial will be given additional privileges. The names were read one by one. And then, first place Leo Plov. The courtyard erupted with murmurs. Some students were shocked, others visibly angry. He beat all of us. How is that possible without aura? Leo simply stepped forward and accepted the announcement with quiet dignity. Chelsea grinned proudly. You did it! But Leo's expression didn't change. This doesn't mean anything, he said softly. It just means I'm one step closer. One step closer to what? Chelsea asked curiously. Leo's gaze turned toward the distant horizon. To the real fight, he said. The courtyard was still buzzing with excitement from the announcement of the rankings, but Leo didn't linger. While others celebrated or sulked, he slipped away quietly, heading toward the training grounds. Chelsea caught up with him halfway there, a curious look on her face. You could at least enjoy it a little, she said. First place isn't something just anyone gets. Leo glanced at her, his crimson eyes calm. The rankings don't matter. What matters is what comes next. Chelsea sighed. You're impossible. The training grounds were mostly empty, bathed in the soft glow of lanterns. Leo drew his wooden practice sword and began his drills. Each swing precise, controlled, relentless. Sweat dripped down his face. But he didn't stop. I was too slow. He thought, recalling the fallen hero battle. If that thing had been even a little faster, I wouldn't have made it. The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Clover stood at the edge of the field, arms crossed. You train even after winning first place? He asked. Leo didn't stop swinging. Winning means nothing if I get complacent. Clover smirked faintly. Good. Then maybe next time we face each other, it will actually be interesting. Leo finally stopped, resting the tip of the wooden sword on the ground. Next time? He asked. Clover's expression turned serious. You're strong, Leo, stronger than anyone here. But strength without purpose is meaningless. I want to see what your purpose really is, and whether it's worth fighting for. Without another word, he turned and left, leaving Leo standing there in silence. The next day, the academy assembled once again. This time, it was to announce the teams for the upcoming Hero Expedition, a large-scale simulation that would determine which students were ready for advanced training. Professor Ain's voice boomed over the courtyard. The expedition begins tomorrow at dawn. Groups have been assigned based on your rankings. Each team will face a unique hero record scenario, and only those who complete their objective will pass. The students murmured nervously. Leo's group was announced first. Himself, Chelsea, Carr, and 2 others he barely knew. Chelsea leaned close and whispered, "Looks like we're together again." Leo nodded slightly. "Stay focused. This won't be like the last trial." That night, as the students prepared their gear, tension hung in the air. Some were excited, others terrified. Leo sat quietly in his room, sharpening his blade by lantern light. This is it, he thought. Another step closer. He glanced at the ring of life, feeling its faint glow on his finger. Somewhere deep inside, he knew that the upcoming trial would push him further than ever before, and that something dangerous awaited them on the other side. When he finally lay down to rest, the moonlight streaming through the window lit up his crimson eyes. Whatever tomorrow brought, he would be ready. Dawn broke over the academy grounds, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The students gathered at the massive stone gate where the hero expedition would begin. The air was thick with tension, excitement for some, fear for others. Leo stood quietly at the front of his group, his sword strapped to his side, crimson eyes reflecting the morning light. Chelsea adjusted her gloves, glancing at him nervously. "You're too calm," she said. Leo didn't look at her. "Calm is the only way to survive." Carr approached, grinning. "Well, calm or not, we're about to face whatever the academy throws at us. Think we'll get another giant spider?" Chelsea shot him a glare. "Don't even joke about that." Before more words could be exchanged, Professor Ain's voice boomed across the courtyard. "Listen up. This expedition will test not just your strength, but your ability to work as a unit. You will face monsters, traps, and illusions. Only teams that complete the objective will pass. If you can't keep up," he smirked, "don't bother coming back." A golden light enveloped them, pulling them into the hero record once again. When the light faded, they found themselves standing at the edge of a dense, mist-covered forest. The trees towered high, their twisted branches blocking most of the sunlight. Carr shivered. "Creepy place." Chelsea took a deep breath and focused her mana. "Stay close. This place feels wrong." The group advanced cautiously, weapons ready. Every sound seemed magnified. The crunch of leaves underfoot, the distant howl of some unseen beast. Then came the first attack. A shadow leapt from the mist, claws gleaming. Leo's sword flashed, cutting it down in a single motion. But more emerged. A pack of wolf-like creatures with glowing red eyes, surrounding them from all sides. "Formation!" Leo commanded. Chelsea unleashed a gust of wind, blowing 2 of the wolves back, while Carr's spear impaled another. The forest rang with the sounds of battle as the group fought back to back. Holding their ground, minutes felt like hours. But finally the last creature fell. Everyone was breathing hard, their clothes stained with blood and dirt. Carr wiped his forehead. "If this is just the beginning..." Leo sheathed his sword. "Then we keep moving." Hours later, they reached a clearing, and froze. At the center stood a massive, ancient tree, its bark blackened and twisted. Strange runes glowed faintly across its surface, pulsing with a dark light. Chelsea's eyes widened. That's the source. Whatever is corrupting this place, it's coming from that tree." Before they could approach, the ground split open. A monstrous guardian emerged, its body a fusion of bark and bone, glowing eyes fixed on them. Leo stepped forward, his expression calm but fierce. "This is our real trial," he said quietly. The guardian roared, the air shaking from its power. Leo drew his sword, wind swirling around him as Chelsea readied her spells. "Everyone," he said, his voice steady, "don't hold back." And with that, he charged. The guardian's roar shook the entire forest, scattering birds and shaking leaves loose from the towering trees. Its enormous body glowed with a sickly green light as dark energy pulsed from the runes on its chest. Leo gripped his sword tighter, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him. "This is it," he said under his breath. Chelsea stepped up beside him, wind swirling around her hands. "No holding back?" she asked. Leo's crimson eyes narrowed. "Not this time." The guardian struck first, its massive arms slamming into the ground and sending a shockwave through the clearing. The students were thrown back, barely managing to stay on their feet. "Spread out," Leo commanded, darting forward. Carr followed, his spear glowing with aura as he lunged at the guardian's leg. The attack connected, but the creature didn't even flinch. It simply swung its other arm, knocking Carr back into a tree. "Carr!" Chelsea shouted. "I'm fine." He groaned, dragging himself to his feet. Leo's blade flashed as he aimed for the glowing runes on the creature's chest. Sparks flew, but the blow barely left a scratch. TCH. Leo gritted his teeth. Its armor is too thick. Chelsea unleashed a storm of wind blades, slicing at its limbs and forcing it to take a step back. Focus on the weak spots. She yelled. The Guardian let out a roar and black vines erupted from the ground, lashing at the students. One of their teammates screamed as a vine wrapped around his leg, dragging him toward the monster. Leo moved like lightning, severing the vine and pulling the student free. Stay behind me, he ordered. Minutes felt like hours as the battle raged. The Guardian was relentless, every strike shaking the earth. Sweat dripped down Leo's face as he dodged another crushing blow. We can't keep this up, Chelsea shouted over the chaos. Leo's crimson eyes glowed faintly as he steadied his breathing. Then he saw it. A brief opening as the Guardian raised both arms for a massive strike. Chelsea, he called. Now. Chelsea didn't hesitate. She poured every ounce of mana into one last, devastating spell. A tornado of wind shot forward, wrapping around the Guardian and holding it in place. Leo charged. His sword blazed with light as he leapt high, bringing the blade down in a single, decisive strike aimed straight at the core. The runes shattered. The Guardian let out a deafening, earth-shaking cry before collapsing, its massive body turning to ash that scattered on the wind. The clearing was silent. Everyone was panting, exhausted. Chelsea fell to her knees, her hands trembling from overexertion. Leo stood in the center of the clearing, his sword still in hand, breathing hard but steady. We did it, Carr said, leaning on his spear for support. Leo finally lowered his weapon and looked around at his team. Good work, he said quietly. As they caught their breath, the dark runes on the tree faded, and the twisted corruption that had filled the forest slowly began to vanish. A golden light surrounded them once again, pulling them out of the hero record. Back in the academy courtyard, Professor Ain stood with his arms crossed, a rare look of satisfaction on his face. You passed, he said simply. Some of the other instructors exchanged impressed glances. One of them muttered, to defeat a Guardian on their first expedition. This year's freshmen are different. Leo didn't smile. He simply turned and walked away, crimson eyes burning with quiet determination. This was only the beginning, and he knew that even greater challenges awaited. The courtyard was quiet when Leo left the evaluation hall. The golden light of evening painted the academy walls, and for a brief moment, the chaos of the expedition felt far away. Chelsea caught up to him, her expression bright despite the exhaustion that still clung to her. You were amazing back there, she said. Even Professor Ain seemed impressed. Leo didn't slow his pace. Impressing him doesn't matter. There will always be something stronger waiting. Chelsea frowned. You really don't know how to enjoy a victory, do you? Leo didn't answer, but a faint smirk touched his lips. The next day brought no rest. The academy posted new assignments on the Central Board dual evaluations to determine official combat rankings. The students gathered around, buzzing with anticipation. Looks like you're up against some tough ones, Carr said, scanning the list. But hey, at least you're not fighting me. Chelsea looked worried. They put you against upper-ranked students right away. They're trying to test you, Leo's crimson eyes gleamed. Good, the first duel drew a large crowd. Leo stepped into the arena, his practice sword in hand. Across from him stood a tall boy with broad shoulders, aura already flaring around him like fire. This will be quick, the boy sneered. Leo said nothing. The signal was given, and the boy charged. Swinging with all his strength, Leo sidestepped smoothly, countering with a strike that sent the boy's sword flying before the crowd even realized what had happened. The arena went silent. The instructor raised a hand. Winner, Leo Plov. Murmurs spread through the students as Leo left the arena without a word. But the real test came later that day. Next match, Leo Plov versus Clover Myler. The announcement sent a ripple through the spectators. Everyone leaned forward, eager to see the Academy's top two rising stars clash. Clover entered the arena with his usual calm expression, his blue eyes fixed on Leo. I told you I'd surpass you, Clover said quietly. Leo raised his sword, his stance solid. Then try. The match began. Clover was faster than anyone Leo had faced so far. His blade came from impossible angles, his movements precise and efficient. Leo parried, countered, and for the first time in weeks, felt the thrill of a real fight. The clash of their blades rang through the arena, sparks flying with every strike. Neither gave an inch. Chelsea gripped the railing, heart pounding. They're evenly matched. Finally, Clover fainted, then spun and delivered a strike aimed at Leo's side. Leo blocked at the last moment, his crimson eyes glowing as he twisted, disarming Clover with a perfectly timed counter. The tip of Leo's sword hovered inches from Clover's throat. The arena fell silent again. Clover froze, then slowly smiled. Good, you really are someone worth surpassing. Leo lowered his weapon, breathing steady. Then get stronger. Next time I won't hold back. As Leo left the arena, whispers followed him. The strongest freshmen. No one's ever beaten Clover like that. But Leo didn't care about the title. He only looked ahead, toward the next challenge, whatever it might be. The arena still echoed with the memory of Leo and Clover's clash, but the academy didn't slow down. A new challenge awaited, one that would push every student beyond their limits. Professor Ain stood before the assembled class, his expression as unreadable as ever. Your duels proved your individual strength, he said. But strength alone won't save you on the battlefield. Tomorrow you will face a team battle simulation, a full-scale hero record encounter where cooperation will be the only path to victory. Murmurs spread among the students. Chelsea glanced at Leo, worry flickering in her eyes. Team battles? That means we might be split up. Leo nodded slightly. It doesn't matter who I'm with. I'll make sure we win. The next day, the students stood on the teleportation circle, grouped into squads. Fate had indeed split them apart. Leo found himself placed with Clover, along with two other students who clearly weren't thrilled to be in the same party. Clover smirked slightly. Looks like we'll see what you can really do, Leo. Leo met his gaze calmly. Just keep up. Golden light engulfed them, and when it faded, they were standing in the middle of a war-torn battlefield. Broken weapons littered the ground, smoke rose from distant fires, and the sound of inhuman roars echoed across the field. Move, Leo ordered, already striding forward. The first wave of monsters appeared, hulking armored beasts with jagged weapons and glowing eyes. Clover darted forward, cutting one down in a single strike, his movements graceful and precise. Try not to fall behind, he called. Leo ignored the jab, his own sword flashing as he cut through two more creatures with a single sweep. The battle intensified quickly. The monsters came in greater numbers, forcing the group to fight back to dash back. One of their teammates panicked as a beast charged at him. Focus. Leo barked, intercepting the attack and driving his blade through the monster's chest. Clover's blue eyes narrowed as he watched. Leo fight, calm, efficient, unyielding. For a brief moment, Clover smiled. So this is the strength that defeated me. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. But finally, the battlefield grew quiet. Or so they thought. The ground shook. From the smoke emerged a massive warlord, twice the size of the others. Clad in black armor, its weapon a massive axe that radiated killing intent. Boss monster! Clover muttered. Leo stepped forward, crimson eyes glowing faintly. Stay behind me. This one's mine. The warlord roared and charged. The ground cracked under its weight. Leo met the charge head-on, their blades clashing with a deafening clang. The force of the impact sent a shockwave through the field, knocking the others back. Chelsea, watching from her own battle group in the distance, froze as she saw Leo locked in combat. He's fighting it alone? The duel was brutal. Each strike from the warlord was heavy enough to shatter the ground, but Leo moved like water, dodging, countering, striking whenever he saw the smallest opening. Finally, he found it, a brief moment when the warlord raised its axe too high. Leo's sword glowed with a brilliant light as he struck, cleaving through the monster's chest. The warlord let out a final, earth-shaking roar before collapsing, its body dissolving into golden motes of light. Leo lowered his sword, breathing heavily but standing tall. The rest of the squad stared at him in stunned silence. Was that? One of them whispered. Really a freshman? Clover smirked, sheathing his blade. I told you. He's different. When they returned to the academy, the instructors confirmed their victory. Professor Ain's lips curled into the faintest of smiles. Impressive. You continue to exceed expectations, Leo Plov. But Leo didn't bask in the praise. He simply walked past the crowd, crimson eyes focused on the future. Whatever trials lay ahead, he would be ready. The academy's halls buzzed with energy. The team battle simulation had shaken everyone, not just because of the monsters, but because of the students who had stood out. And at the top of everyone's whispers was one name. Leo Plov. Chelsea found him leaning against the railing of the courtyard balcony. Staring out at the sprawling academy grounds, you've become kind of a celebrity, she teased. Leo didn't turn. It's just noise. Chelsea folded her arms. Noise or not, people are starting to look to you as a leader. That means something. Leo's crimson eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. The next morning, Professor Ains summoned the top-ranked students to the strategy hall. The next phase begins, he said, his voice as sharp as ever. You will no longer fight in simulations. From here on, your missions will take place in the real world, and the consequences of failure will be real as well. A faint ripple of unease passed through the group. Your first assignment will be to investigate a dungeon recently discovered on the outskirts of Lumen. Reports say it is unstable, its mana flow irregular, as though something within is trying to break free. Leo felt a chill run down his spine. This is not just a test, Aang continued. This is a mission. If you cannot handle it, you may withdraw now. No one moved. Ain's lips curved into the faintest smirk. Good. Then prepare yourselves. You leave at dawn. The following day, the group set out. The forest surrounding the dungeon was eerily silent. Not even the sound of birds or wind. Chelsea shivered. I don't like this place. Clover walked ahead, his blue eyes scanning the path. Stay alert. The air is thick with mana. When they reached the dungeon entrance, a black mist seeped out like smoke, curling around their feet. This is bad, one of the students muttered. Leo stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his sword. We go in, stay close. Inside, the air was heavy, every breath tasting of iron and something far fouler. The first attack came quickly, twisted, humanoid creatures crawling from the walls, their bodies warped and shrieking. Here we go. Carr yelled, driving his spear through the first one. Leo's blade flashed as he cut down another, the crimson glow of his eye faintly lighting the darkness. Chelsea summoned a wind barrier, shielding the group as they pushed deeper into the dungeon. But the further they went, the stronger the creatures became. This place feels alive, Chelsea whispered, her voice tense. Finally, they reached the heart of the dungeon. At its center was a massive crystal, pulsing like a beating heart. That's the core, Clover said grimly. Before anyone could move, the crystal cracked, and from it emerged a monstrous figure, far larger and darker than anything they had faced so far. Its presence was suffocating. Everyone, Leo shouted, form up. The creature attacked, its claws slamming into the ground and sending shockwaves through the chamber. Leo dashed forward, intercepting its strike and locking blades with its massive, jagged weapon. Chelsea, he called. She nodded, unleashing a barrage of wind blades that cut into the creature's limbs. Clover circled to its flank, striking with precision while Carr pinned its movement with his spear. Still, the monster was powerful, too powerful. Fall back. One of the students cried, No! Leo shouted, his crimson eye glowing brighter. We finish this here! He poured everything he had into one final strike, his blade glowing with searing light. The blow pierced the monster's chest, shattering the crystal embedded within. The creature let out a final, deafening shriek before dissolving into dust. Silence filled the dungeon. Everyone stood still, breathing heavily, the weight of the battle settling over them. Then, slowly, Chelsea smiled. We did it. Leo lowered his sword, his expression calm. Good work. Let's go home. As they stepped out of the dungeon, the sun was rising, its golden light washing over them like a promise of what was to come. But deep inside, Leo knew this was only the beginning. Something darker was stirring in the world, and he could feel that his true battles were still ahead. The golden rays of dawn still clung to the horizon as the group made their way back to the academy. Their bodies were weary, their clothes torn and stained from battle, but there was a new weight in their steps, the weight of having survived something real. Professor Ain was waiting for them at the gates, arms crossed. His usual smirk softened into something almost like approval. You came back alive, he said simply. Good, that means you're worth investing in. Chelsea exhaled in relief. We passed, right? Ain's eyes glinted. You did more than pass. You've proven you can face death and not falter. That is the first step toward becoming heroes. Later, as the others dispersed, Leo remained in the courtyard. He gazed at the rising sun, the faint glow of the ring of life shining on his finger. This power, he murmured. It still isn't enough. Behind him, Clover approached silently. You've changed, Clover said, his calm blue eyes studying Leo. That fight in the dungeon. You weren't just protecting yourself. You were protecting everyone. Leo didn't look back. If I don't, no one else will, Clover smiled faintly. Good, keep getting stronger. I want to fight you again when you're even stronger than this. Leo finally glanced at him, a hint of a smirk playing on his lips. Be careful what you wish for. That night, a heavy rain fell over the academy. Thunder rolled in the distance as Leo trained alone in the empty arena, his sword flashing in the dim torchlight. Every strike was sharper, every movement more precise. I can't stop here, he thought. There's something coming. I can feel it. A sudden chill ran down his spine. From the shadows at the edge of the arena, a figure appeared, cloaked, faceless. Leo Plov, the figure said, its voice low and distorted. You've begun to awaken. Good. Leo raised his sword, every sense on edge. Who are you? The figure didn't answer. Instead, it tossed something to the ground, a black insignia glowing faintly in the rain before vanishing into the darkness. Leo knelt, picking it up. The symbol pulsed faintly in his hand, filling him with a strange, foreboding energy. Chelsea, he murmured, gripping it tightly. Something's wrong. This isn't over. The next morning, the academy was abuzz with news. A series of mysterious attacks had taken place in nearby towns, monsters appearing out of nowhere, leaving destruction behind. Professor Ain stood before the students, his voice grave. Your next mission will not be a test, he said. This is a real threat. Whoever or whatever is behind these attacks must be stopped. Leo's crimson eyes gleamed, the black insignia hidden in his pocket. He knew this was connected, and as the students prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, Leo silently vowed, no matter what's waiting out there, I will be ready. The air around the academy was thick with tension. News of the monster attacks had spread faster than wildfire, and, for the first time since their arrival, the students could feel the weight of what it meant to be heroes. Training. Leo stood at the edge of the assembly hall, silent as Professor Ain laid out the mission details. The attacks are not random, Ain said grimly. We believe someone or something is summoning these creatures deliberately. Your job is to find the source and eliminate it. His sharp gaze swept across the room. This mission is not optional. You will go, and you will succeed. The next morning, the expedition team gathered at the academy gates. Chelsea adjusted her cloak nervously. It feels different this time, she admitted. Like we're stepping into something bigger than we've ever faced. Leo nodded, his expression unreadable. Because we are. Clover approached, his usual calm expression replaced by something colder, more focused. Try not to get killed, he said. Leo smirked faintly. Worry about yourself. The journey took them far from the safety of Lumen. The deeper they went into the wilds, the stranger the world became. The trees were twisted, the sky a dull gray, and the air buzzed with unstable mana. Something is warping the land, Clover murmured, crouching to examine a blackened patch of earth. This is no natural phenomenon. Chelsea shivered. It feels like the dungeon, only worse. Suddenly, a distant roar shattered the eerie silence. Here we go, Leo said. Drawing his sword, the first wave hit them hard. Shadowy creatures erupted from the ground, their glowing eyes fixed on the students. Carr was the first to react, his spear spinning as he drove back two of them. Chelsea conjured a whirlwind that cut through the enemy line. But more came, faster and stronger. Stay together, Leo shouted, cutting down another monster with a swift strike. But the ground beneath them cracked, splitting wide, and from it crawled something massive. A hulking abomination, twice the size of the others, its body covered in black crystal, let out a roar that shook the forest. That's new, Clover muttered, stepping forward with his sword ready. Leo's crimson eye glowed faintly. Take out the smaller ones. I'll handle that. Alone? Chelsea gasped, but Leo was already moving. The fight was brutal. The abomination's claws gouged deep scars into the earth as it swung wildly, forcing Leo to dodge again and again. He slashed at its limbs, sparks flying as his blade met the hardened crystal. But the monster barely flinched. Damn. He hissed under his breath. Clover joined him suddenly, his blade flashing as he struck the monster's side. You'll die if you try to play hero by yourself. Leo didn't argue. He simply adjusted his stance. Fine, he said. Let's finish it together. Their combined assault was devastating. Clover's precise strikes chipped away at the crystal armor while Leo delivered powerful, decisive blows. Chelsea and Carr took out the remaining monsters, then turned to support them with ranged attacks. Finally, Leo saw an opening. Now! He shouted. He leapt high, his sword glowing brilliantly as he brought it down on the monster's core. The crystal shattered, and, with a final, ear-splitting scream, the creature collapsed into ash. Silence followed. Everyone stood panting, their bodies bruised and bloodied but alive. Chelsea collapsed onto the ground, laughing breathlessly. We actually did it. Leo sheathed his sword, his expression calm. No, we survived. There's a difference. Clover smirked faintly. You're still as dramatic as ever. When they returned to the academy, Professor Ain listened to their report in silence. Then, to everyone's surprise, he nodded. You did well, he said. But this is just the beginning. Whoever is behind these attacks. They are not finished yet. Leo's crimson eyes glinted. Deep inside, he knew this was true. As he left the hall, he clenched his fist around the black insignia he had been keeping hidden. Whatever lay ahead, he would face it, and nothing would stop him. Night fell over Lumen Academy, but sleep was the last thing on anyone's mind. The news of the attack and the mysterious crystal creature had spread through the halls, sparking fear and excitement in equal measure. Leo sat alone in the training yard, his sword resting across his knees. The rain from the previous night had left the ground damp, the air cool and still. Chelsea appeared, carrying a lantern. I thought I'd find you here, she said softly. Leo didn't look up. You should be resting, Chelsea sat beside him. And you should stop blaming yourself. We survived, Leo. That's what matters. Leo's crimson eyes glinted faintly in the lamplight. Survival isn't enough. If I had been stronger, we wouldn't have come so close to losing anyone. Chelsea hesitated, then placed a hand on his arm. Then get stronger, but don't lose yourself in the process. For a moment, Leo said nothing. Then he gave the smallest of nods. The next day, Professor Ain gathered the top students for a closed briefing. The attacks are accelerating, he said, pointing to a map dotted with red marks. Villages near the outer territories have been wiped out overnight. This is no longer simple monster activity. It's organized. Clover crossed his arms. Then we hunt whoever's behind it, Ain smirked. That's exactly what you're going to do. This will be a covert mission. No grand heroics, no banners, just results. He turned to Leo. You'll lead the strike team. A ripple of murmurs passed through the room. Chelsea's eyes widened. Leo? But Ain cut her off with a sharp glance. He's proven himself more than once. If anyone can get this done, it's him. That evening, the team prepared for departure. Carr strapped on his spear, looking unusually serious. This feels different. Like we might not all come back this time. Leo tightened the strap on his sword belt. Then don't die. Carr blinked, then grinned. Easy for you to say, Clover approached, his calm demeanor unshaken. Try not to get sentimental, he said to Carr before glancing at Leo. If you fall behind, I won't wait for you, Leo smirked faintly. Good. I don't need you to. They set out under the cover of night, traveling swiftly across the darkened plains. The world was silent except for the sound of their footsteps and the distant howl of wind. When they reached the ruins where the attacks had originated, the stench of blood was thick in the air. Chelsea covered her mouth. This is horrible. The ruins were littered with broken weapons, shattered carts, and scorch marks. And at the center of the devastation stood a black obelisk, its surface pulsing with dark light. That's our source, Clover said grimly. As they approached, the obelisk began to hum and creatures began to emerge from the shadows. More twisted and monstrous than before. Leo drew his sword, his crimson eye glowing. Here they come. The battle erupted. Chelsea's wind magic carved through the first wave, Carr's spear striking with deadly precision. Clover moved like a phantom, cutting down enemies before they could even scream. But the obelisk pulsed again, and a massive shadow detached itself from its surface. A humanoid figure clad in black armor, its face hidden behind a jagged mask. Finally, a distorted voice echoed. The Academy's little heroes have arrived. Leo stepped forward, sword at the ready. Who are you? The figure chuckled darkly. The beginning of your end. Then it attacked. The clash was unlike anything they had faced before. The figure was fast, impossibly fast, its strikes heavy enough to crack the ground. Leo parried and countered, sparks flying as their blades met again and again. Clover joined the fray, his sword flashing. But even the two of them together were barely holding their own. Chelsea shouted, We need to destroy the obelisk. It's fueling him. Go, Leo ordered. We'll keep him busy. As Chelsea and Carr sprinted toward the obelisk, Leo and Clover fought in perfect tandem, neither giving an inch. But the figure was relentless, laughing as it pushed them back. You're strong, but not strong enough. Leo's crimson eye flared with light as he met the figure's blade head-on, holding his ground. Maybe not yet, he said through gritted teeth. But I will be. At that moment, Chelsea unleashed her full power, sending a hurricane of wind crashing into the obelisk. The black stone cracked. Then, shattered. The figure let out a roar of rage before vanishing into a swirl of black. Miss silence fell over the ruins. Leo lowered his sword, chest heaving. This isn't over. Clover sheathed his blade. No, it's just starting. The ruins were silent after the black figure's disappearance, but the silence felt wrong, heavy. As if the air itself was holding its breath, Leo stood at the center of the battlefield, his sword still raised, his crimson eye glowing faintly. Chelsea approached cautiously. "Leo, are you all right?" He didn't answer at first. He was staring at the spot where the masked figure had vanished. "That wasn't just some random summoner," Leo said finally. His voice was low, almost a growl. "He knew who we were. He was waiting for us." Clover crossed his arms. "Which means this wasn't an accident. Someone is targeting the academy." The weight of his words sank over the group like a stone. Back at the academy, the mood was tense. Professor Ain listened carefully to their report, his usual sharp expression darkening. A black obelisk, a masked warrior, and a summoning ritual. Ain muttered, "This confirms it. Someone is orchestrating these attacks." Chelsea bit her lip. "But who would do this? And why?" Ain's gaze fell on Leo. "That's what we intend to find out. And you," he pointed at Leo, seemed to have caught their interest. Leo's jaw tightened, but he said nothing that night. Leo couldn't sleep. He stood alone on the academy rooftop staring at the stars. The black insignia he had found earlier pulsed faintly in his hand, as if reacting to the encounter. "What are you trying to tell me?" he whispered. A faint voice echoed in his mind, chilling and distant. "You cannot escape what you are." Leo's grip on the insignia tightened until his knuckles turned white. The next day, training resumed, but the usual air of competition was gone. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the next attack. During sparring practice, Clover approached Leo. "You're distracted," Clover said flatly. Leo parried his strike and stepped back. "I'm thinking. About him?" Leo nodded once. "He's not done. Next time he won't just retreat." Clover smirked faintly. "Good. Then maybe next time we can finish what he started." That evening the academy alarm sounded. "Attack!" A voice shouted from the WATCHTOWR. Students and instructors rushed to the courtyard as dark portals began opening all around the academy grounds. From them poured wave after wave of shadow creatures, snarling and screeching. "This is no training exercise." Ain roared. "Defend the academy." Leo drew his sword, his expression hard. "Chelsea Carr, stay with me." The battle for the academy began. Magic lit up the night sky as students and teachers fought side by side. Chelsea unleashed gales of cutting wind, while Carr's spear skewered anything that came too close. Leo moved through the battlefield like a phantom, cutting down enemy after enemy, his crimson eye blazing. Then through the chaos, he saw him. The masked figure stood atop the outer wall, watching the carnage like a conductor overseeing a symphony. "Leo Pluv!" The figure's voice rang out over the battlefield. "Come and face me!" Without hesitation, Leo sprinted toward him. Their blades met in an explosion of sparks as they clashed atop the wall. "You again," Leo growled. The figure laughed. "Did you really think our little game was over?" Their duel raged, faster and fiercer than before. Each strike shook the stone beneath their feet. "You're strong," the figure said, almost admiringly. "But you haven't even begun to tap into your true power." Leo's crimson eye flared brighter. "Then I'll show you exactly how strong I am." With a roar, Leo unleashed a surge of energy, driving the figure back. But before he could press the attack, the figure stepped into a swirling portal of darkness. "This is just the beginning," the figure said, his voice echoing. "Next time I'll take everything from you," and then he was gone. Leo stood there, chest heaving, his sword still glowing. Chelsea and Clover arrived seconds later, but the enemy was already gone. "He's playing with us," Clover said darkly. Leo sheathed his sword, his expression grim. "Then we end the game next time." The chapter closes with the academy still burning in places, students tending to the wounded, and Leo standing at the edge of the courtyard, the black insignia glowing faintly in his pocket. Whatever came next, he knew this was no longer just a test. This was war. The academy courtyard was still littered with debris from the battle. Smoke hurled into the night sky, and the faint glow of healing magic flickered over the wounded. Leo stood silently, his sword still in hand, staring at the black scorch marks left by the portal. Chelsea approached cautiously, her expression pale but determined. "Leo," she said softly, "you should rest." Leo didn't look at her. "If I rest now, next time we'll lose more people." Chelsea's eyes softened. "You can't carry all of this alone." "I have to," Leo replied. "No one else can." The following morning, the academy convened an emergency council. Professor Ain's face was grim. "Last night's attack proves what we already suspected. This enemy is not just testing us. They are preparing for war." He turned to Leo, Clover, Chelsea, and Carr. "You four will form an elite squad. From now on, you will be dispatched for missions beyond Academy grounds. Your job is to hunt down the summoners and destroy their network before they strike again. Clover smirked faintly. Finally, something interesting. Chelsea looked less enthusiastic. That sounds dangerous. Good, Ain said coldly. Then you understand what's at stake. Later that day, Leo trained in silence, pushing his body to the limit. Each strike of his sword was faster, harder, more precise. Stronger, he thought. I have to be stronger. The black insignia pulsed faintly in his pocket, as if responding to his resolve. Suddenly, a voice broke through the silence. You'll break yourself if you keep this up. Leo turned to see Clover leaning casually against the fence. Why are you here? Leo asked flatly. Clover shrugged. Because we're on the same side, whether you like it or not. And because I don't want you collapsing before the next fight. Leo smirked faintly but said nothing. That night, the elite squad departed on their first mission. They traveled through the dark forest beyond the city, guided only by moonlight. This is where the last sighting was reported. Carr whispered. They found the summoning site deep in the woods, a circle of runes glowing faintly, still warm with mana. But before they could destroy it, shadowy figures emerged from the trees, surrounding them. It's a trap, Clover said calmly. Drawing his sword, Leo stepped forward, crimson eye blazing. Then we fight our way out. The battle was fierce. Chelsea summoned walls of wind to block incoming attacks, while Carr struck with brutal efficiency. Clover moved like lightning, cutting through the enemy ranks. Leo cut down one attacker after another, but then felt a surge of power behind him. The masked figure stepped out of the shadows once again, his blade gleaming. You didn't think I'd let you destroy this, did you? He taunted. Leo tightened his grip on his sword. This ends tonight. Their duel lit up the night. Blow after blow rang through the forest, sparks flying as steel met steel. This time Leo's movements were sharper, his strikes heavier. The masked figure was forced back, his mocking tone replaced by genuine focus. You're improving, he admitted. Good, you'll make this fun. But before the fight could reach its conclusion, the figure retreated into a portal once again, laughing. You're still not ready. When you are, come find me. Breathing hard, Leo sheathed his sword. Chelsea approached, her face tense. He's toying with us. Leo's crimson eyes glowed faintly. Not for much longer. The moon was still high in the sky when the elite squad returned from their mission. Their bodies were exhausted, but their resolve was harder than ever. Professor Ain was waiting for them in the council chamber. His sharp eyes swept across the group. So you destroyed the summoning site, he said. Good, but this won't stop them. If anything, you've provoked them to strike harder. Chelsea's hands clenched at her sides. Then we'll just have to be ready. Ain nodded once. You will. Because from now on, you'll be on the front line of every mission. Later that night, Leo trained alone in the courtyard, rain soaking his clothes but failing to cool the fire burning inside him. The masked figure's words echoed. In his mind, when you are ready, come find me. His crimson eye flared, casting a faint glow on the wet stone. I'll find you, he murmured. And next time you won't escape. The next morning, the squad was dispatched again, this time to intercept a caravan rumored to be carrying supplies for the summoners. They waited on a ridge overlooking the road. There, Clover said quietly, pointing to the approaching wagons. Leo signaled, and the team moved as one. The ambush was swift. Chelsea's wind magic toppled the first wagon, blocking the road while Carr's spear pinned down the guards, but as they approached the final cart, they froze. Inside was not cargo, but people, prisoners, bound and gagged. Chelsea gasped. They were kidnapping them? Leo cut the ropes, freeing the captives. Get them to safety. But just as they began to retreat, a familiar voice echoed through the air. You're becoming quite the nuisance. The masked figure appeared on the road ahead, his blade gleaming under the sun. Clover stepped forward, sword ready. Not this time. Leo's crimson eyes narrowed. This ends here. The fight was explosive. Leo and Clover attacked in unison, their blades a blur as they drove the figure back. Chelsea supported them with gusts of wind that knocked the enemy off balance, while Carr struck from behind with precision thrusts. For the first time, the masked figure faltered, clearly on the defensive. You're stronger than before, he said through gritted teeth. Good. He parried Leo's strike but was forced back several steps, leaving deep cracks in the road. Finally, Leo saw his chance. With a roar, he unleashed a surge of power, his sword glowing like molten steel. The masked figure blocked, barely, but the force of the blow shattered his mask. Everyone froze. Beneath the mask was a young man, not much older than Leo, with silver hair and piercing golden eyes. You... Chelsea whispered. The man smirked, unbothered by his unmasking. So now you know my face. What will you do with it? Before anyone could react, he leapt back and vanished into a swirling portal, leaving only the sound of his mocking laughter behind. Leo stood in the middle of the road, chest heaving, his crimson eye glowing brighter than ever. This changes nothing, he said quietly. Next time I'll finish it. Clover sheathed his blade with a faint smile. Good, I'll be there to see it. The chapter closes with the rescued prisoners being escorted back to safety. While Leo stares into the distance, the image of the silver-haired enemy burned into his mind. For the first time, they had seen the face of their enemy, and Leo knew this was only the beginning of something far larger. The silence after the battle was deafening. Even as the rescued prisoners were led away, Leo stood motionless in the middle of the road. The image of the silver-haired enemy burned into his mind. Chelsea approached carefully. Leo. He didn't answer. Clover sheathed his sword with a faint smirk. Well, now we know who we're dealing with. That should make things easier. Leo finally spoke, his voice quiet but sharp. No, this just made it harder. He's not just an enemy, he's someone who wanted me to see his face. Chelsea frowned. But why? Leo's crimson eye glowed faintly. Because he wants me to come after him. Back at the academy, the council convened immediately. Professor Ain listened to their report, his expression grim, so he revealed himself. Ain said slowly. That means he's confident, too confident. He turned to Leo. We'll need to prepare for the next strike. You've become the target, Leo, whether you like it or not. Leo's jaw tightened. Then I'll be ready. In the days that followed, training became relentless. Leo pushed himself harder than ever, mastering new techniques, sharpening his reflexes, and channeling the strange power that surged through his crimson eye. Chelsea watched him one evening, worry in her eyes. You're going to break yourself if you keep this up. Leo didn't stop swinging his sword. If I break, then I wasn't strong enough to begin with. Clover, leaning against the wall, smirked. At least you're finally starting to act like someone worth surpassing. The next mission came sooner than anyone expected. Scouts reported that another summoning ritual was underway, this time in the ruins of an abandoned fortress. The elite squad set out immediately, traveling through the night. When they reached the fortress, the air was thick with dark mana. This is worse than last time, Carr muttered, gripping his spear tightly. Chelsea took a deep breath. Let's finish this quickly. Inside the fortress, they found the summoning circle, and standing at its center, the silver-haired enemy, waiting for them. I knew you'd come, he said with a grin. Good, I was beginning to get bored. Leo stepped forward, his sword glowing faintly. This ends tonight. The enemy laughed. No, Leo Plov, tonight is just the beginning. The battle exploded with fury. The enemy moved faster than before, his strikes heavier and more precise. Leo met him head-on, their blades sparking as they clashed again and again. Clover joined the fray, matching the enemy blow for blow. Chelsea and Carr fought off the summoned creatures that poured from the circle, desperately holding the line. The fortress shook with every strike, stones cracking and dust falling from the ceiling. You're getting stronger, the enemy said with a grin. But not strong enough. Leo's crimson eye flared, and with a roar, he unleashed a strike that forced the enemy back several steps. But just as Leo prepared to finish it, the enemy retreated into another portal, laughing. Next time, he said, I won't hold back. And then he was gone. The summoning circle collapsed. The fortress falling silent, everyone stood there, breathing hard, the weight of what had just happened settling over them. Chelsea wiped sweat from her brow. He's going to keep coming back, isn't he? Leo sheathed his sword slowly. Yes, and when he does, I'll be ready. The chapter ends with Leo standing alone at the fortress gates, staring into the distance as the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon. He knows the next battle will be the hardest yet, and he silently vows that the next time they meet, only one of them will walk away. The fortress battle had left its mark on everyone, but for Leo, it was more than just scars and exhaustion. It was a call. A challenge he couldn't ignore. As the squad returned to the academy, Professor Ain stood waiting for them, his expression as sharp as ever. You survived, he said simply. But survival isn't victory. That enemy will strike again, and next time he won't be satisfied with retreat. Leo's crimson eye glowed faintly. Then I won't let him leave alive next time. Ain's lips curved into the faintest of smirks. Good, because the academy is preparing for war, and you will be at the front. Following days were filled with relentless training. Leo sparred with Clover daily, their clashes becoming faster, sharper, more precise. You're improving, Clover admitted one evening, wiping sweat from his brow. But you still hesitate at the last moment. Leo sheathed his sword. Next time I won't. Chelsea watched from the sidelines, torn between pride and worry. Just don't lose yourself, Leo. You're not fighting this battle alone. Leo glanced at her, his expression softening slightly. I know, that's why I can keep going. Their next mission came sooner than expected. Reports indicated that the enemy was amassing forces near the northern cliffs. A staging ground for something far larger. When the squad arrived, the sight was worse than they imagined. Hundreds of summoned creatures waiting in perfect formation. And, at their center, the silver-haired man, smiling as if he had been expecting them. So you came, he said casually. Good, I was starting to wonder if you'd lost your nerve. Leo stepped forward, sword drawn. This ends here, the enemy laughed. No, Leo Pluv, this is where it truly begins. The battle erupted with terrifying intensity. Chelsea unleashed a storm of wind, tearing through the first wave of creatures, while Carr fought like a whirlwind, his spear striking with deadly precision. Clover darted straight for the enemy commander, his blade a blur, but the silver-haired man blocked effortlessly, his golden eyes gleaming with amusement. You're stronger than before, he said, parrying another strike. But still not enough. Leo joined the clash, his crimson eye blazing. The ground cracked beneath their feet as the three of them clashed in a flurry of steel. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the sound of their swords. Each strike from Leo was faster, heavier, fueled by a power he barely understood. You're awakening, the enemy said, almost approvingly. Good, show me more. With a roar, Leo unleashed a strike so powerful that it split the ground, forcing the enemy back several steps. But instead of anger, the man laughed. Yes, he said, his voice filled with exhilaration. That's it. That's the strength I've been waiting for. Just as Leo prepared to deliver the finishing blow, a massive portal opened behind the enemy, and more creatures poured out, surrounding the squad. Fall back, Chelsea shouted. No, Leo said, his crimson eye blazing like fire. We finish this now. The final clash was brutal. Clover fought back-to-back with Leo, cutting down creature after creature. Chelsea and Carr held the line, their magic and spear striking in perfect rhythm. Finally, Leo broke through the enemy's guard, his sword glowing with a blinding light as he struck. The silver-haired man staggered, blood running down his arm, the first real wound he had taken. He grinned. Perfect. Next time, Leo, I'll show you what true power looks like. And with that, he vanished into the portal. Leaving the battlefield in silence, Leo stood there breathing heavily, his sword still glowing. We're getting closer, he said quietly. Clover nodded. Yes, but next time it won't just be a battle. It will be war. The chapter ends with Leo staring at the still glowing portal residue, his crimson eye reflecting the light. He knew that the next encounter would decide more than just victory or defeat. It would decide the fate of everyone he cared about. The battlefield was still smoldering when Leo and the squad returned to the academy. The night air felt heavy, carrying the weight of what had just happened, the enemy commander's first defeat, and the knowledge that he would come back stronger than ever. Professor Ain met them at the gates, his sharp gaze sweeping over the team. You held your ground, he said. But the war isn't over. That strike will provoke them. They'll hit us harder next time. Leo nodded, his expression hard. Then we'll be ready. In the days that followed, preparations for an all-out confrontation began. The academy's training grounds were alive with activity. Squads drilling together, fortifications being reinforced, supply lines established. Chelsea trained with renewed determination, her wind magic sharper, faster, more precise. Clover pushed Leo harder than ever in their sparring sessions, their clashes echoing like thunder across the courtyard. You've changed, Clover said after one particularly brutal match. Wiping blood from his lip, Leo lowered his sword, breathing hard. No, I'm just finally becoming who I'm meant to be. One night as Leo stood alone beneath the stars, the black insignia in his pocket pulsed again. A voice whispered through his mind, the same voice that had haunted him before. The path you walk leads only to destruction. Are you prepared to bear that weight? Leo clenched his fist around the insignia. If that's what it takes to protect them, then yes. The call to arms came sooner than expected. Scouts reported a massive movement of enemy forces, converging near the southern cliffs, an army larger than anything they had seen before. Professor Ain's voice rang out over the academy. This is it. This is the battle that will decide everything. You will fight, and you will win. The march to the battlefield was grim and silent. When they arrived, the sight before them stole the breath from their lungs. Thousands of creatures stretching across the plain, their glowing eyes shining like stars in the darkness. And at the center, standing atop a black stone platform, was the silver-haired commander, smiling as though this was all just a game. "Welcome, Leo," he called, his voice carrying across the field. "I've been waiting for you." Leo stepped forward, sword glowing with a faint light. "This ends tonight," the commander laughed. "Good. Show me everything you have." The battle that followed was chaos given form. Magic and steel clashed under the moonlight. Chelsea's gales tore through enemy ranks. Carr fought like a man possessed, and Clover carved a path straight toward the commander. Leo followed, every step leaving cracks in the earth as his power surged higher than ever before. When he reached the commander, their swords collided in an explosion of force that shook the ground. The duel was nothing like before. Leo's strikes were faster, his movements sharper, each one pushing the commander closer to the edge. "You've grown," the commander said, his grin widening even as blood dripped from his arm. Yes. This is the fight I wanted." But Leo wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting to end this once and for all. With a roar, he unleashed everything, the full power of his crimson eye blazing like a star. Their blades met one final time, the shockwave tearing through the battlefield. When the light faded, the commander staggered back, breathing hard. He smirked, even as he wiped blood from his mouth. "You're almost there, Leo. Next time you'll be ready to face me, truly." And before Leo could strike again, the commander stepped back into a portal, vanishing into the night. Leo lowered his sword slowly, his breathing ragged. Chelsea ran to his side, worry in her eyes. "Leo, are you?" "I'm fine," he said quietly, though his gaze never left the spot where the portal had been. "This isn't over," he murmured. "Next time I end it." The chapter closes with the Academy forces rallying around their victory, but Leo standing apart from the crowd, his crimson eye glowing faintly in the darkness. The final confrontation was coming, and this time, he would not let his enemy escape. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence was not victory. It was the calm before the next storm. Back at the academy, the entire student body buzzed with rumors. The silver-haired commander had been wounded, and for the first time, it felt like the war could actually be won. But Leo knew better. He stood in the training hall long after everyone else had left, his sword moving in precise arcs. Each strike was sharper, each movement faster. He could feel himself approaching something new, something dangerous. Chelsea found him there, her face drawn with worry. "Leo," she said softly, "you can't keep doing this to yourself." Leo didn't stop. "If I stop now, next time I might not be strong enough." Chelsea clenched her fists. "You're already strong enough. What you need now isn't just power, it's trust. Trust us to fight with you." For a long moment, Leo said nothing. Then, slowly, he lowered his sword. "Then fight with me," he said quietly. Until the very end. The next day, the Academy Council gathered every student and instructor. Professor Ain stood at the center of the hall, his voice cold and commanding. "The enemy is gathering for a final strike," he said. "This is it, the decisive battle. If we lose here, there will be nothing left to protect." He turned his gaze toward Leo. "You will lead the vanguard. This war will end with you." Leo nodded once. "Then it ends tonight." That evening, the army set out. The march was silent, the tension in the air so thick it felt like a living thing. When they reached the battlefield, the enemy forces were already waiting, an endless sea of shadows under the pale moonlight. And there, at the front, stood the silver-haired commander. He smiled, his golden eyes shining with excitement. "You came," he said. "Good, I would have been disappointed if you didn't." Leo stepped forward, sword glowing. "This ends here." The commander's grin widened. "Then show me, Leo Plov, show me the hero you claim to be." The clash that followed was apocalyptic. Magic lit up the sky as spells rained down on both sides. Chelsea's wind magic carved through enemy ranks like a storm. Carr's spear struck with bone-breaking precision, and Clover fought at Leo's side like a shadow. Their movements perfectly synchronized. But all of it felt distant to Leo, because all he could see was the commander before him. Their blades collided again and again, sparks flying, each strike faster and harder than the last. "You're close," the commander said through a grin. "I can feel it. You're almost there." Leo's crimson eye blazed, and with a roar, he pushed forward, driving the enemy back step by step. Then, something inside him broke, or awakened. Power surged through his body, his movements becoming almost otherworldly. The commander's golden eyes widened. Yes. That's it. That's the strength I've been waiting for." Leo's next strike shattered the commander's guard, knocking him to one knee, but instead of finishing him, Leo froze, his blade hovering just above the man's throat. "This isn't about killing you," Leo said through clenched teeth. This is about ending this war. The commander laughed softly, even as blood ran down his face. Then you'd better be ready, Leo Plov, because the next time we meet, there will be no holding back. With a final grin, he vanished into a portal, leaving only silence in his wake. Leo lowered his sword, breathing heavily. Chelsea approached, her face pale but resolute. Leo, we're really going to have to fight him again, aren't we? Leo nodded slowly. Yes, and next time, it will be the last time. The chapter ends with Leo standing at the edge of the battlefield, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. His crimson eye glows faintly as he makes a silent vow. The next battle will decide everything. Dawn broke over the horizon, painting the battlefield in pale gold, but there was no warmth in the light. The war was not over. It was only waiting. Leo stood atop the academy's watchtower, his crimson eye glowing faintly as he stared out over the fields beyond. He's out there, Leo murmured. I can feel it. Chelsea joined him, her cloak fluttering in the wind. Then let's finish this, Leo, once and for all? Leo nodded slowly. Yes, this ends tonight. That evening, the Academy Army mobilized for what everyone knew would be the final battle. The air was electric with tension as students and instructors lined up in formation. Professor Ain's voice rang out over the ranks. Tonight, we end this war. You have trained for this moment, bled for this moment. Now go and claim your victory. The army roared and the march began. When they reached the battlefield, the sight before them was staggering. The enemy army stretched as far as the eye could see. A tide of shadow under the cold moonlight. At the center stood the silver-haired commander, his golden eyes glowing like twin suns. You came, he called, his voice carrying across the plain. Good, I would have been disappointed otherwise. Leo stepped forward, his sword glowing brilliantly. This is the last time, no matter what it takes. The commander grinned. Then show me the hero you were meant to be. The battle erupted with a fury unlike anything they had faced before. Chelsea's wind screamed across the field, tearing through ranks of creatures. Carr struck like a living storm, and Clover fought at Leo's side, every move perfectly in sync. But this time, the commander wasn't holding back. His power exploded outward, dark mana ripping through the ground and throwing soldiers aside like rag dolls. Leo. Chelsea shouted over the chaos, but Leo was already moving, his crimson eye blazing as he closed the distance. Their final duel began. Steel clashed against steel, sparks flying with every strike. Leo pushed himself beyond his limits, every strike fueled by everything he had fought for. His friends, the academy, the world itself. You've grown, the commander said, laughing even as blood ran down his cheek. You're almost there. Leo roared, his blade shining like a second sun. No, I am there. With one final, devastating strike, Leo shattered the commander's guard and drove his blade through the black core pulsing in his chest. The battlefield went silent. The commander staggered, blood spilling from his lips, but he was smiling. Well done. Leo Plov, he said, his voice weak but filled with pride. You really are a hero. And with that, he dissolved into motes of light, leaving nothing but silence behind. The remaining creatures collapsed, their bodies disintegrating as the summoning magic faded. The battlefield was still. Then, slowly, the Academy forces began to cheer. It's over, Chelsea said, tears in her eyes. It's finally over. Leo stood there for a long moment, his sword still glowing, before finally sheathing it. Yes, he said quietly. It's over. The chapter ends with Leo standing at the top of a hill as the first rays of dawn break across the sky, bathing the battlefield in light. His crimson eye dims, and for the first time, he allows himself a small, tired smile. The war is over, but the legend of Leo Plov, the hero who saved the Academy, is only just beginning. The war was over, but the echoes of battle still lingered over the Academy grounds. The, once quiet halls were now filled with the sound of rebuilding. Hammering, voices calling orders, the steady hum of healing magic as the wounded were tended. Leo stood in the courtyard, watching as the rising sun bathed everything in a golden light. For the first time in what felt like years, there were no portals, no monsters, just peace. Chelsea approached, her expression soft. It's really over, she said quietly. Leo nodded. Yes, for a moment they stood in silence, letting the weight of everything they had fought for finally settle. That afternoon, the Academy gathered in the Great Hall for a ceremony. Professor Ain stood before the entire student body, his usual sharp tones softened for the first time. Today, we honor those who fought and those who fell to protect this world. And above all, we honor the one who led us to victory. He turned toward Leo. Leo Plov, Ain said, his voice ringing through the hall. Step forward. Leo did so, his head held high. In the history of this academy, few have achieved what you have. You are no longer just a student. From this day forward, you are recognized as a hero of the academy. The hall erupted in cheers. Chelsea smiled through tears. Carr clapped him on the back with a grin, and Clover simply smirked. Took you long enough? He said. Leo allowed himself a small smile. Guess I finally earned the title. That night, the four of them sat together under the stars. Carr leaned back on the grass. So, what happens now? Chelsea hugged her knees. We rebuild. We train the next generation. And we make sure this never happens again. Clover glanced at Leo. And you? Leo looked up at the night sky, the stars reflecting in his crimson eye. I'm not done, he said softly. There will always be more battles. More threats. But now, I won't face them alone. Chelsea reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. Then we'll face them together, she said. The chapter closes with the camera pulling back, showing the academy restored, its banners fluttering proudly in the wind. Leo stands at the center of the courtyard, the ring of life glowing faintly on his finger, his sword at his side. The war was over, but the legend of Leo Pluv, the academy's hero, was just beginning. Peace had returned to the academy, but it was a fragile peace, the kind that could be shattered at any moment. Leo stood in the library one quiet morning, staring at the reports Professor Ain had handed him. Strange disturbances had been recorded in distant regions, mana fluctuations, sightings of unknown creatures, whispers of a new force rising. It never ends, Leo murmured. Chelsea entered, carrying a stack of books. Still reading reports? Leo nodded. Something's happening out there. I can feel it. Chelsea placed the books down and gave him a small smile. Then we'll face it, just like we always do. Later that day, the academy received unexpected visitors, emissaries from the royal capital. The academy received unexpected visitors. Delegation entered the great hall with grave expressions. We bring word from the king, the envoy said. A dark power is stirring beyond the northern mountains. He requests the academy's aid. Professor Ain turned to Leo. Looks like your rest will have to wait. Leo smirked faintly. I wasn't planning on resting anyway. That night, Leo met with Clover, Chelsea, and Carr under the moonlit sky. This is our next mission, Leo said, spreading out a map. We leave at dawn. Carr grinned. A royal summons, huh? Guess we're moving up in the world. Clover crossed his arms. This isn't about titles. This is about whoever is strong enough to threaten the kingdom. Chelsea nodded. Then we stop them before it's too late. The next morning they set out once more. But this time, the journey felt different. They were no longer students being tested. They were heroes on a mission. The chapter ends with the group traveling into the horizon. The rising sun casting long shadows behind them. Far away, in the depths of a dark cavern, a new figure watched them through a crystal mirror. So, the figure murmured, the hero approaches. Good, let's see if he can survive what's coming next. The crystal glowed ominously, hinting that the peace Leo had fought so hard to win might only have been the beginning. The road to the northern mountains stretched endlessly ahead, winding through dense forests and rugged hills. The journey was quiet at first. Too quiet. Leo led the way, his hand never far from the hilt of his sword. Chelsea and Carr followed closely, while Clover kept to the rear, his sharp eyes scanning the tree line. Feels like we're being watched, Carr muttered under his breath. Leo nodded slightly. We are. Moments later, the first attack came. Dark figures leapt from the shadows, not monsters this time, but skilled assassins, their movements fast and precise. Leo's blade flashed, cutting down the first attacker before he could strike. Chelsea summoned a wall of wind to push the others back, giving Carr room to strike with his spear. Clover moved like lightning, cutting through the enemy ranks with surgical precision. When the dust settled, the assassins lay defeated, but Leo's expression was grim. These weren't random bandits, he said. They were trained. Someone sent them. That night, as they camped under the stars, Clover sharpened his blade while Chelsea tended to the fire. This mission is bigger than they told us, Clover said flatly. Whoever sent those assassins knew exactly where we'd be. Leo stared into the flames. Which means they know we're coming, Chelsea shivered. Then they're preparing for us. The next day, they reached a small village at the foot of the mountains, but instead of the bustling town they expected, they found burned homes, shattered carts, and silence. Chelsea covered her mouth in horror. This was a massacre. Leo knelt beside the ashes of what had once been a house. They're not just summoning monsters anymore, he said quietly. They're wiping out entire villages. Clover's eyes hardened. Then we wiped them out first. As they prepared to leave, an old man stumbled out from the ruins, clutching a blood-stained staff. You must stop them, he rasped. The one behind this. He waits in the Black Spire. If he isn't stopped, the whole kingdom will fall. Leo helped the man sit down gently. Then we'll stop him. I swear it. The man smiled faintly before closing his eyes. His last breath leaving his body. The chapter ends with Leo standing at the edge of the ruined village, the wind whipping around him. He turned to his team, his crimson eye blazing. Tomorrow, he said, we climb the mountain. And when we reach the Black Spire, we end this. The morning sun cast a pale light over the mountain path, its cold rays glinting off the frost-covered stones. Leo led the way, his expression set, every sense on edge. Chelsea, Carr, and Clover followed close behind, their weapons ready. The path grew steeper as they climbed, the air thin and biting. This place feels wrong, Chelsea murmured, rubbing her arms. It is, Clover said flatly. This whole mountain reeks of death. The first attack came without warning. A blast of dark energy struck the cliffside, sending shards of rock tumbling down. Ambush! Carr shouted, raising his spear. Shadowy figures emerged from the mist. Stronger, faster, more coordinated than the assassins they had faced before. Leo's sword flashed as he charged forward. Cutting through the first wave with ruthless efficiency, Chelsea summoned a whirlwind, scattering the attackers while Clover struck from the side, his movements a blur of precision. The battle was fierce, but eventually the last of the attackers fell. Breathing hard, Leo wiped blood from his cheek. They're trying to slow us down, he said grimly. Someone doesn't want us reaching the spire. Clover kicked one of the fallen enemies aside. Then we climbed faster. As they continued upward, the path narrowed into a treacherous ridge. The drop on either side dizzying, halfway across the ground shook. An enormous beast, half wolf and half shadow, leapt onto the ridge. Blocking their path, its glowing red eyes fixed on Leo, and it let out a bone-chilling roar. Chelsea's breath caught. That's not just a monster. That's a guardian, Leo stepped forward, crimson eye blazing. Then we defeat it. The fight with the guardian was brutal. Its claws tore through the stone as it charged, forcing Leo to dodge aside. Carr leapt onto its back, driving a spear into its shoulder, while Chelsea's magic buffeted it with cutting winds. Clover struck at its legs, forcing it to stumble. Finally, Leo saw his opening dot with a roar. He leapt forward, driving his blade into the creature's heart. The guardian let out one last cry before collapsing, dissolving into dark mist dot as the mist faded. The path ahead cleared, revealing the distant silhouette of the Black Spire, its jagged shape piercing the clouds. Leo stared at it, his hand tightening on his sword. That's where it ends, he said quietly. Clover smirked faintly. Then let's make sure it ends on our terms. The chapter closes with the group standing together, the spire looming over them like a dark omen. The wind howled through the mountains, carrying with it the promise of the final confrontation. The Black Spire loomed before them, its jagged walls stretching into the storm-darkened sky. Leo took a deep breath and stepped forward, his boots crunching against the blackened earth. Once we go inside, he said, there's no turning back. Chelsea nodded, her expression grim but determined. Then let's finish what we started. The massive doors groaned open as they approached, revealing a vast torchlit hall. The air inside was heavy with dark mana, each breath tasting like ash dot. The moment they crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them. Trap? Carr growled, raising his spear. No, Clover said, his crimson eyes scanning the shadows. Invitation. Dark figures emerged from the edges of the hall, an army of elite guardians. Clad in black armor, Leo drew his sword, the blade glowing with a faint golden light. This is it, he said. Stay close. The first wave charged, and the battle began. The hall erupted into chaos. Carr spun his spear in deadly arcs, knocking enemies off their feet. Chelsea's magic sent gales of wind howling through the chamber, hurling armored warriors into the walls. Clover moved like a phantom, cutting through the enemy ranks with ruthless efficiency. Leo fought at the center of it all, his sword blazing like a second sun as he carved a path through the darkness. When the last of the guardians fell, a slow, mocking clap echoed through the hall. From the far end of the chamber, a figure stepped into the light, the one they had been chasing, the true mastermind behind it all. The man's golden eyes gleamed with amusement. You made it, he said, smiling faintly. Good. I was beginning to think you'd never get here. Leo raised his sword. This ends now. The man's smile widened. Yes, it does. The ground shook as a massive surge of dark energy filled the chamber. And the real battle began. Leo charged, his crimson eye blazing as he clashed with the enemy. Their blades met in a shockwave that sent cracked spiderwebbing across the stone floor. Clover joined him, striking from the side while Chelsea and Carr fended off a new wave of summoned creatures. Every strike was faster, harder, a test of everything Leo had become. At one point, the enemy's blade nearly struck Chelsea, but Leo intercepted it, the force of the blow driving him to one knee. You're strong, the man said, grinning down at him. But is it enough? Leo's crimson eye flared. It's enough to stop you. With a roar, he forced the man back, sparks flying as their blades clashed again. The chapter ends with the battle still raging, the spire shaking as the two forces collided with everything they had. Leo's final words echo through the hall. This is where it ends for you. The black spire trembled as the battle raged on. The torches lining the walls flickered violently, casting wild shadows across the hall. Leo's blade clashed against the enemies with a shower of sparks, each strike ringing like a bell of war. You've grown stronger, the man said, grinning as he parried another blow. But strength alone won't save you. Leo's crimson eye blazed, his voice low and determined. I'm not fighting just for strength. I'm fighting for them. Clover darted in from the side, his sword slashing across the man's guard. Chelsea unleashed a powerful gust of wind, driving back the summoned creatures that threatened to overwhelm them. Carr, bleeding from a cut on his arm, gritted his teeth and lunged forward, his spear striking true and forcing the enemy to stumble. This is our chance. Clover shouted. Leo roared, channeling every ounce of power into a single strike. For a brief moment, everything went silent. Then the hall exploded with light as Leo's sword connected, sending the enemy crashing through one of the spire's pillars. The man emerged from the dust, laughing. Yes, that's what I've been waiting for. He raised his hand and a wave of dark energy surged outward, knocking everyone off their feet. The spire began to crack, pieces of stone falling from the ceiling. Chelsea scrambled to her feet. Leo, if we don't end this now, the whole place will collapse. Leo nodded grimly, his sword glowing brighter than ever. Then we end it now. The final clash began. Leo and the man met in the center of the hall, their blades striking so fast they were little more than blurs of light. Each impact sent shockwaves through the spire, shattering stone and tearing through the air. Finally, Leo saw his opening. With a roar, he drove his sword straight through the man's guard, the blade glowing like molten gold. The man staggered, blood on his lips, but he was smiling. Well done, Leo Plov, he said softly. You've surpassed my expectations. Dark energy surged around him as he stepped back. But this isn't over, he said, vanishing into a portal of black flame. The true battle has yet to begin. The spire shook violently, cracks spreading across the floor. Move! Leo shouted, grabbing Chelsea's hand. The group sprinted for the exit as the entire structure began to collapse around them. They leapt through the doors just as the spire came crashing down behind them, the shockwave throwing them to the ground. When the dust cleared, Leo stood slowly, breathing hard. It's not over, he said quietly, staring at the smoking ruins. But next time there won't be anywhere for him to run, Clover smirked, wiping blood from his sword. Then let's make sure we're ready. The chapter ends with the group standing together, silhouetted against the burning remains of the spire. Above them, the sky crackled with dark energy, a sign that the enemy still lived and the true war was only beginning. The ruins of the black spire still smoldered as the sun rose over the horizon. Leo stood at the edge of the rubble, his sword resting at his side. The wind tugged at his cloak, carrying the acrid scent of smoke and dust. Chelsea joined him, her expression unreadable. We survived, she said softly. Leo's crimson eye glowed faintly. Barely. Clover approached, his arms crossed. And he's still out there. Leo nodded. Yes, and he's stronger than we thought. Back at the academy, the mood was heavy. The instructors gathered to discuss what had happened. Professor Ain's expression was grim. The destruction of the spire was necessary, but the surge of mana released could destabilize the entire region. We don't have much time before something worse takes its place. Leo stepped forward. Then we stop it before it begins. Ain regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. But this time you won't be alone. We're mobilizing every squad we have. In the training yard, preparations began at once. Chelsea refined her magic until the air itself seemed to bend around her. Carr repaired and reforged his spear, each strike of the hammer ringing like a battle cry. Clover sparred with Leo until both of them were dripping with sweat, their blades ringing like thunder in the air. "You're holding back," Clover said. Panting. Leo wiped sweat from his brow. "No, I'm getting used to the power," Clover smirked. "Then get used to it faster. Next time he won't give you the chance to breathe." That night, Leo stood alone under the stars. His crimson eye glowed, reflecting the constellations above. "You wanted me to grow stronger," he murmured. "Fine, I will. And when we meet again, there will be no running." Far away, in a hidden stronghold, the enemy stood before a gathering of cloaked figures. "He's stronger than I expected," he said, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. One of the figures stepped forward. "Then we accelerate the plan. If he's growing this fast, we can't afford to wait." The man's golden eyes gleamed. "Good. Let's see just how far the hero can go before he breaks." The chapter ends with the camera pulling back from both sides, Leo standing at the Academy's highest tower, gazing out at the horizon, and the enemy preparing for war. The clash to come would not just decide their fates. It would decide the fate of the entire kingdom. The dawn was blood-red as Leo and his squad set out once more. Their destination, the northern frontier, where the first signs of the enemy's resurgence had been reported. The air was heavy, charged with the lingering presence of mana. Every sound, the crunch of boots, the whisper of the wind, felt like it was being swallowed by the silence ahead. They didn't have to wait long for trouble. From the tree line ahead, shadowy creatures emerged, not the mindless beasts they had fought before, but disciplined soldiers, their armor black and their movements unnervingly precise. "They're organized," Clover said grimly. Drawing his blade, Leo stepped forward, sword in hand. "Then we break their line before they can advance." The first clash was brutal. Leo's sword flashed, cutting through the enemy vanguard with blinding speed. Chelsea unleashed a storm that sent several of the creatures tumbling through the air, while Carr and Clover struck in perfect unison, tearing a path through the formation. But the enemy didn't falter. They adapted, moving as one, surrounding the group from all sides. "Leo!" Chelsea shouted. "We're being boxed in." Leo's crimson eye blazed. "Then we break the box." With a roar, he released a surge of power unlike anything he had ever unleashed before. Golden light erupted from him, scattering the enemy and cracking the ground beneath his feet. Even Clover, who rarely looked surprised, raised an eyebrow. "Well, guess you've been holding back." Leo's breathing was heavy, but his expression was calm. "I told you. I'm ready this time." The remaining enemies retreated into the shadows, leaving the clearing eerily quiet once again. Chelsea glanced at Leo. "They're not done." "This was just to test us." Leo sheathed his sword. "Good. Let them test us. Next time we strike back." Far away in a dark chamber, the enemy commander watched through a glowing crystal. "He's grown even faster than I thought," he mused. One of the cloaked figures behind him stepped forward. "Shall we proceed with the next phase?" The commander's golden eyes gleamed. Yes, it's time he saw what true despair feels like. The chapter ends with Leo staring into the horizon, the wind whipping around him. "This war isn't over," he said quietly. "But neither am I." The night was unnaturally still. Even the forest seemed to hold its breath as Leo and his teammate camped. But the silence didn't. A distant horn echoed through the trees, followed by the sound of marching feet, hundreds of them. "They found us," Clover said, already drawing his sword. Leo stood, his crimson eye glowing in the darkness. "Then we meet them head-on." The enemy came like a tide of black steel, surrounding the clearing from every side. This time, they were not scouts or assassins, this was an army. Chelsea summoned a roaring wall of wind, buying them a few precious seconds, while Carr planted his spear in the ground. "Leo, we can't hold them all off." Chelsea shouted over the roar of battle. "Then we don't hold them," Leo said, stepping forward. "We break them." He charged straight into the enemy ranks, his sword blazing like a comet. Every strike was a flash of light, cutting through the front lines and shattering their formation. Clover followed, striking like lightning at Leo's side while Chelsea and Carr held the rear, preventing them from being overwhelmed. But for every enemy that fell, two more seemed to take their place. "They're stalling us." Clover realized and then they saw why. From the tree line emerged a massive, hulking beast larger than any they had faced before. Its body covered in black armor and its glowing eyes fixed on Leo. Chelsea's face went pale. "That's a war beast. They're actually using a war beast." The creature roared, shaking the earth, and charged. Leo met it head-on. The impact shook the ground, throwing dirt and debris into the air. For a moment, It looked as though the beast had the upper hand, its sheer size forcing Leo back step by step. But then Leo's crimson eye flared, and with a roar, he pushed back, driving his blade into the beast's armored chest. The creature howled, thrashing violently, but Leo didn't stop until it finally collapsed, the ground trembling as its massive body hit the earth. The remaining soldiers hesitated for a moment, then retreated, melting back into the forest as quickly as they had come. The clearing was silent again, but the damage had been done. The ground was torn apart, the trees broken, and everyone was exhausted. Chelsea sank to her knees, breathing hard. That was just the beginning, wasn't it? Leo nodded grimly. Yes, they wanted to see how far we'd go. Next time they won't hold back. Far away, the commander watched through a crystal mirror, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He's stronger than ever, he said softly. Perfect. Now we can begin the real war. The chapter ends with Leo standing in the moonlit clearing, his sword dripping with black ichor, his crimson eye glowing like a beacon. This isn't over, he said quietly. Not until one of us is gone. The night after the battle was restless. Leo sat by the campfire, staring into the flames. His crimson eye glowed faintly, reflecting the firelight. Chelsea approached quietly, sitting across from him. You haven't slept, she said softly. Leo shook his head. I can't. Not while he's still out there. Before dawn, the ground began to tremble. Clover was the first to react, his sword already in hand. They're coming, he said sharply. Moments later, the forest erupted with movement. This time, it wasn't just soldiers, hulking warbeasts. Armored cavalry and dark mages stepped into the clearing, their combined power radiating a suffocating aura. They brought an army, Carr muttered, tightening his grip on his spear. Leo rose to his feet, his sword blazing with golden light. Then we give them a war. The battle that followed was unlike anything they had faced before. Chelsea's winds turned into a raging tempest, tearing through enemy ranks. Carr's spear struck like thunder, while Clover cut through the dark mages before they could unleash their spells. Leo charged into the center of the battlefield, every strike sending shockwaves through the ground. But for every enemy they felled, more took their place. We can't hold this position, Chelsea shouted. Then we push forward, Leo roared. With a burst of speed, he broke through the enemy lines, carving a path straight toward the enemy commander who was directing the assault. The two clashed in a blinding storm of steel and magic, each strike shaking the battlefield. You just don't stop, the commander said with a twisted smile. Good, show me more. Leo's crimson eye blazed brighter. Gladly, the duel was fierce, but eventually the commander pulled back, signaling a retreat. The enemy forces melted away into the forest, leaving behind nothing but scorched earth and the bodies of the fallen. Leo stood there, breathing hard, his sword still glowing. They're testing us, he said. Next time it won't just be a test. Far away, in the enemy stronghold, the golden-eyed man laughed softly. Yes. Keep growing stronger, Leo Plov. When the time comes, I want you at your very best. The chapter ends with Leo standing atop a hill as the sun rises, casting long shadows across the battlefield. His crimson eye glows like a burning star as he makes a silent vow. This war ends with me. The battlefield was silent after the enemy's retreat, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of waiting. Leo stood among the fallen, his sword still in hand. Chelsea approached, her expression pale. We barely made it out of that alive, she said softly. Leo nodded, his crimson eye glowing faintly. And next time will be worse. Back at the academy, the mood was grim. Professor Ain gathered the remaining squads and instructors. The room was filled with tension as he spoke. The enemy is no longer probing our defenses, Ain said. They are preparing for full-scale war. He turned to Leo. You've seen it firsthand. What do you think their next move will be? Leo's expression hardened. They're going to strike the capital. If we wait for them to move, it'll be too late. Plans were drawn, strategies debated. Chelsea stood beside Leo, determination burning in her eyes. Then we take the fight to them, she said. Carr slammed his fist on the table. Finally. I'm tired of waiting for them to attack. Even Clover nodded, his usual smirk replaced by a cold, serious expression. If we move fast, we might just have a chance. That night, Leo trained alone under the stars. Each swing of his sword was faster, sharper, as if he were trying to carve the very air apart. Clover approached silently, watching him for a moment. You're still thinking about that fight. Leo didn't stop swinging. I'm thinking about the next one, Clover smirked faintly. Good, because next time he won't hold back. Far away, in the enemy's stronghold, the golden-eyed commander stood before a massive war council. The hero grows stronger by the day, he said, a twisted smile spreading across his face. Good, let him come. I want him to see everything burn. The chapter ends with Leo standing at the academy gates at dawn, his team behind him. He looked back at Chelsea, Carr, and Clover, then turned his gaze to the horizon. This ends with us, he said, one way or another. And with that, they set out once more toward the enemy's heart and the battle that would decide everything. The sun had barely risen when Leo and his team crossed the border into enemy territory. The land here was twisted, the trees blackened, the ground cracked and lifeless. The air itself felt heavy, as though the world was holding its breath. This place... Chelsea whispered. It feels cursed. It is, Clover said flatly, scanning the surroundings. Stay alert. This is where they want us to be. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the wasteland. Then, without warning, the ground split open from the fissure. Dark creatures poured forth, dozens of them, their glowing eyes like embers in the gloom. Ambush! Carr shouted, spinning his spear into position. Leo stepped forward, his sword igniting with golden light. Then we cut our way through. The battle erupted. Chelsea summoned a storm that tore through the first wave, while Clover darted through the shadows, cutting down the creatures before they could surround them. Leo moved like a whirlwind, each strike leaving trails of blazing light. But the creatures kept coming. This isn't just an ambush, Chelsea realized. They're trying to keep us here. Then a roar echoed through the wasteland. A massive, hulking figure emerged from the shadows, a general of the enemy forces, clad in black armor, wielding a blade as tall as a man. So, the general said, his voice like gravel, you're the so-called hero. Leo raised his sword, crimson eye blazing. And you must be the first obstacle. The clash shook the ground. The general's strikes were heavy, each one forcing Leo back step by step. But Leo adapted, his movements becoming faster, sharper, until he was matching blow for blow. Chelsea and Carr worked to hold back the lesser creatures, giving Leo space to fight. Finally, with a roar, Leo unleashed a surge of power, his blade glowing white-hot. He struck the general with a devastating blow that shattered his armor and sent him crashing to the ground. The remaining creatures scattered, retreating into the shadows. Breathing hard, Leo stood over the fallen general. Tell your master, Leo said coldly, that I'm coming for him. The general only laughed weakly before dissolving into black smoke. The chapter ends with Leo and his team standing at the edge of a dark valley, the path ahead leading deeper into enemy territory. From here, Clover said. Things only get worse, Leo nodded, his crimson eye glowing. Good, then we're getting closer. The valley was shrouded in an eerie fog as Leo and his team descended deeper into enemy territory. Each step echoed unnaturally, as though the earth itself was warning them to turn back. Chelsea walked close behind Leo, her hand never far from her spell focus. This place feels wrong, she whispered. It is, Clover replied coldly. Stay sharp. If they didn't stop us at the general, they're planning something worse ahead. The mist grew thicker until the world seemed to fade to gray. Then, out of the haze, a lone figure appeared, a hooded stranger, leaning heavily on a staff. Who are you? Leo demanded, stepping forward with his sword ready. The figure lifted their hood just enough to reveal a scarred, weathered face. I'm... What's left of the resistance, the stranger said, their voice hoarse. And if you want to survive what's coming, you'll listen to me. Around the campfire that night, the stranger told their story. Months ago, this region had been a thriving trade route until the enemy swept through, leaving nothing but ash. Their goal isn't just conquest, the stranger said grimly. They're gathering something ancient buried beneath these lands. Leo's eyes narrowed. A weapon? Worse, the stranger said. A seal. If they break it, nothing in this world will stop them. Before Leo could respond, a sudden sound split the night, the shrill cry of an alarm horn. They found us! Carr shouted, already grabbing his spear. The fog lit up with dozens of glowing red eyes. They're not going to let us leave, Clover said, smirking. Guess we fight our way out. The battle was fierce. Leo struck like a blazing storm, cutting through the enemy vanguard. Chelsea's magic roared, scattering groups of attackers, while Carr and Clover fought back to back, holding the line. The stranger proved surprisingly skilled, their staff glowing with bursts of sealing magic that trapped several enemies in glowing runes. When the last of the creatures fell, the stranger looked at Leo. If you truly mean to stop them, they said, you'll need to reach the ruins before they do. Leo nodded, wiping blood from his blade. Then we move at first light. The chapter ends with the group standing at the edge of the valley, the mist parting just enough to reveal ancient stone ruins in the distance. Leo's crimson eye glowed faintly. "Whatever they're after," he said. "We stop it here." The ruins loomed ahead, half buried in the earth, their jagged stone arches reaching toward the stormy sky. Leo stood at the entrance, his sword drawn, his crimson eye glowing faintly as he scanned the darkness beyond. "This is it," he said quietly. Chelsea swallowed hard. "It feels alive." "That's because it is," the stranger replied grimly. "These ruins were built to keep something sealed. If you disturb them, they'll fight back." As they stepped inside, the air grew colder. Faded murals lined the walls, depicting scenes of ancient battles, armies of light clashing. Against monstrous shadows, Carr ran his hand along one of the carvings. "Whatever happened here, it wasn't just war. It was annihilation, which means we need to move fast," Clover said. "Before history repeats itself." Suddenly, the ground shifted. Glowing runes lit up beneath their feet, and stone guardians burst from the walls, their hollow eyes shining with malevolent light. "Told you they'd fight back," the stranger muttered. Leo raised his sword. "Then we break through." The battle in the ruins was like nothing they had faced before. Each guardian moved with inhuman precision, their stone blades striking with bone-crushing force. Chelsea's magic lit up the chamber, hurling bolts of wind and lightning, while Carr smashed through the guardians with his spear. Clover struck from the shadows, dismantling them one by one, but for every guardian they destroyed, another seemed to take its place. Then Leo stepped forward, his eye blazing. He drove his sword into the ground, releasing a surge of golden energy that rippled through the ruins, shattering the remaining guardians into dust. For a moment, the chamber was silent, then the floor beneath them rumbled, and a massive door slowly began to open at the far end of the hall. Through the doorway, a faint light glowed, and with it, a pulse of dark energy that sent shivers down everyone's spine. "That's the seal," the stranger said. "And it's weakening." Leo tightened his grip on his sword. "Then we don't let it break." The chapter ends with the group stepping toward the glowing chamber, the light casting their long shadows on the ruined walls, whatever awaited them inside. They knew it would be the most dangerous battle yet. The massive stone door ground opened with a deafening rumble, revealing a chamber bathed in an eerie crimson glow. Leo stepped inside first, his sword raised, his crimson eye blazing brighter than ever. The air was thick with power, ancient, suffocating, almost alive. "This is it," Chelsea whispered. Clutching her spell-focused dot at the center of the chamber stood the seal, a massive slab of obsidian, covered in glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. But they were too late. A figure stood before the seal, his golden eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Welcome," he said, smiling faintly. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd make it." Leo's jaw tightened. "Step away from the seal," the man chuckled. "Why would I? It's almost ready to break, thanks to you clearing the guardians for me." Before Leo could strike, the seal cracked with a deafening sound, releasing a wave of dark energy that knocked everyone to their knees. From the shattered stone, a monstrous shape emerged, a being of pure darkness, its massive form filling the chamber. Chelsea gasped. "That's not just a monster. That's a primordial." The golden-eyed man stepped back, grinning. "Yes, and now it's free." The creature let out a roar that shook the ruins. Leo forced himself to his feet, his sword blazing with golden light. "Then we put it back where it belongs." The battle that followed was chaos. Each strike from the creature sent shockwaves through the chamber, shattering pillars and tearing the floor apart. Leo met its attacks head-on, his blade flashing like a star. Chelsea and Carr supported him with blasts of magic and spear strikes, while Clover struck at the creature's legs to slow it down. But the creature was relentless. It hurled Leo against the wall, the impact cracking the stone behind him. For a moment, it looked as though they might be overwhelmed. Then Leo's crimson eye blazed brighter than ever before. He stood, gripping his sword with both hands. "Not today." With a roar, he unleashed everything. Golden light erupted from him, forming a massive arc of energy that cleaved through the creature, cutting it in half. The primordial let out one final scream before dissolving into black mist, leaving only silence behind. When the dust settled, Leo stood in the center of the ruined chamber, breathing hard. The golden-eyed man was gone, slipped away during the chaos. "Coward," Clover muttered. Leo tightened his grip on his sword. "No, he's just waiting for the next move." The chapter ends with Leo turning to his team, his expression hard but resolute. "This was just the beginning," he said. "Whatever's coming next, we finish it." The ruins were silent after the battle, The air still heavy with the remnants of dark energy. Leo stood in the center of the shattered chamber, his sword planted in the ground, his chest rising and falling with each deep breath. Chelsea approached slowly. "You pushed yourself too far," she said softly. Leo shook his head. "Not far enough." He got away. As they emerged from the ruins, the first light of dawn touched the sky. Clover glanced back at the crumbling entrance. "The seal's gone. Whatever was holding that thing is gone too. If there are more of them—" "Then we find them before he does," Leo interrupted. His crimson eye glowed faintly. "I won't let this happen again." Back at the academy, the atmosphere was tense. Professor Ains studied the report with a grim expression. "So the primordial was real after all," he said. "And he freed it intentionally." He turned to Leo. "Your power, it's grown. But it's dangerous. If you lose control, you could be as much of a threat as the enemy." Leo met his gaze without flinching. "Then I'll just have to stay in control." Training intensified over the following days. Leo pushed himself harder than ever, sparring against multiple opponents at once. Chelsea refined her spells, making them faster and sharper. Car and Clover drilled until their movements were perfectly synchronized. Even the stranger from the ruins remained, teaching them about the ancient seals and what might happen if more were broken. But far away, the golden-eyed man stood atop a blackened cliff, watching as his forces assembled. "The hero grows stronger with every battle," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Good. He'll need every ounce of that power for what comes next." He turned to his lieutenants. "Prepare the next seal. This time we'll see if he can handle 2 primordials at once." The chapter ends with Leo standing alone at sunset, his sword on his shoulder, his crimson eye glowing like a burning ember. "This isn't over," he murmured. "Next time, I'll be ready." The morning mist clung to the ground like a second skin as Leo and his companions made their way through the dead forest. Each step echoed unnaturally, crunching against the brittle leaves that littered the path. Leo walked at the front, his sword sheathed but his hand resting on the hilt. His crimson eye glowed faintly beneath the hood of his cloak, a sign of the power thrumming just beneath the surface. Chelsea kept pace behind him, her gaze darting from shadow to shadow. "I don't like this silence," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Clover chuckled quietly, though his hand was never far from his blade. "Good, that means you're paying attention." Carr's grip tightened around his spear. "They're watching us. I can feel it." Leo's voice was low, but steady. "Then let them watch. When they come, we'll be ready." They didn't have to wait long. A single arrow whistled through the air, striking the ground at Leo's feet. The forest exploded with movement. Dozens of enemy soldiers dropped from the trees, surrounding them in a perfect circle. Chelsea's heart leapt into her throat. "Ambush!" Leo's sword was already in his hand, its blade igniting with a soft, golden glow. "Form up!" He barked, his voice carrying over the sound of the enemy charge. Carr took the front left, Clover the right, Chelsea at the center. The formation was tight, disciplined. They had trained for this. The clash was brutal. Leo moved like lightning, every strike of his blade precise and devastating. Sparks flew as steel met steel, the sound ringing through the forest like church bells. Chelsea's magic erupted around her, forming a barrier of wind that deflected arrows and blasts of dark energy. Carr spun his spear in wide arcs, sweeping enemies off their feet, while Clover struck from the shadows, his movements so fast they were little more than blurs. But this time, the enemy was different. They didn't break, didn't panic, they pressed forward with perfect coordination, their attacks designed to separate the group. "They're trying to split us up." Chelsea shouted. "Then don't let them!" Leo roared back, cutting down another attacker. He leapt forward, driving straight into the heart of the formation, his blade blazing as he cut a path toward the commander in the back. The enemy leader met him head-on, his black sword clashing against Leo's with a sound like thunder. "You're stronger than before," the man said, smiling coldly. "Good, this will make killing you worth my time." Leo's crimson eye blazed brighter. "You can try." The duel was vicious. Each strike shook the ground, sending shockwaves through the air. The enemy commander fought with precision, every movement calculated to exploit Leo's openings. But Leo had grown faster, stronger and more dangerous. He pushed the commander back step by step, sparks flying with every clash of their blades. Meanwhile, Chelsea and the others fought desperately to keep the soldiers from overwhelming them. Sweat ran down Chelsea's face as she unleashed blast after blast of magic, her voice hoarse from the strain. Carr's spear was slick with blood, but he didn't slow down. fighting with a relentless determination. Clover's blades flashed in the dim light, cutting down enemies with surgical precision. Finally, with a roar, Leo disarmed the commander, sending his black sword spinning into the dirt. The man fell to one knee, breathing hard, but he was smiling. "This isn't the end," he said, blood running down his chin. "We've already moved on to the next seal." Before Leo could strike, the commander vanished in a flash of dark energy, leaving only the fallen soldiers behind. Leo stood there, breathing heavily, his sword still raised. Chelsea approached slowly. "Leo, what did he mean?" Leo's expression hardened, his crimson eye glowing brighter than ever. "It means this was just a distraction," he said. "And we're already behind." The chapter ends with the group regrouping. The forest eerily quiet once more. In the distance, dark clouds gathered over the horizon, a sign that the next battle would be even more dangerous. Leo tightened his grip on his sword. "Then we move now. We can't let them break another seal." And with that, they set off at a run, toward the next confrontation and the war that was about to consume the entire kingdom. The sky had turned a sickly shade of red by the time Leo and his team reached the ridge overlooking the valley. Below them, a massive excavation site sprawled across the earth. Dozens of enemy soldiers and dark mages worked tirelessly, their torches casting twisted shadows over the ground. At the center of it all was a massive stone altar, etched with glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. "That's the next seal," the stranger said grimly. "They're already halfway through the ritual." Leo's hand went to the hilt of his sword, his crimson eye glowing like molten fire. "Then we stopped them here." They descended into the valley under cover of darkness, every step measured and silent. But the moment they were within striking distance, a horn sounded. Their presence had been discovered. "Go!" Leo shouted. The clearing erupted into chaos. Chelsea summoned a wall of wind that sent enemy soldiers flying, while Carr charged straight into the nearest group, his spear flashing in the torchlight. Clover moved like a shadow, his twin blades cutting through enemy lines with lethal precision. Leo headed straight for the altar. The dark mages noticed him instantly, their chanting growing louder as they unleashed blasts of black fire in his direction. He cut through them one by one, his golden blade leaving arcs of light in the night. "Stop the ritual!" he roared. But just as he reached the altar, the ground beneath him split open. From the crack emerged something massive, a guardian forged from black stone and molten energy, its eyes glowing with unholy light. Chelsea's face went pale. "That's a seal guardian. They've fully awakened it." Leo gritted his teeth. "Then we take it down." The battle was like fighting a living earthquake. Every step the guardian took shook the earth, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the ground. Leo darted forward, his sword blazing as he struck at its legs. The creature roared, swinging a massive arm that smashed through a line of enemy soldiers, crushing them instantly. Even Clover whistled under his breath. "Well, at least it's killing its own men too." Chelsea and Carr focused on breaking the runes powering the altar while Leo kept the guardian busy. Sweat poured down his face as he dodged another massive strike, rolling to his feet and counterattacking in one smooth motion. Each blow chipped away at the guardian's stone armor, but its core still pulsed with dark energy. Finally, Leo's crimson eye blazed brighter than ever, and he poured everything into a single strike. His blade cleaved straight through the guardian's chest, splitting it in half. The explosion of energy that followed shook the entire valley, scattering the remaining enemy forces. Chelsea collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Did we stop it?" Before anyone could answer, the altar shattered, not from destruction, but completion. A wave of dark energy spread through the valley as a second. Even deeper rumble echoed from beneath the earth. "They finished the ritual," the stranger whispered. "Something's coming." The chapter ends with the ground splitting apart, a massive clawed hand emerging from the depths. Leo stood his ground, his sword glowing like the sun as he whispered to himself, "Then we end this before it begins." The ground shook as the massive claw tore free from the earth, followed by another, and then the creature's head emerged. It was enormous, a nightmare made flesh, its body wreathed in black fire, its glowing eyes burning like molten gold. The entire valley trembled under its weight as it dragged itself out of the chasm, roaring so loudly that the sky itself seemed to shudder. Chelsea stumbled back, shielding her face from the blast of wind. That thing is bigger than the Guardian." "It's not just a Guardian," the stranger said grimly. "It's a full primordial, one of the oldest and most powerful." Leo's crimson eye blazed. "Good," he said, drawing his sword. "Then we end it here." The creature lunged forward, its claws raking through the ground and sending boulders flying like pebbles. Leo sprinted toward it, his blade glowing with golden light. He met the first strike head-on, his sword clashing against the monster's claw in a blast of sparks. The sheer force of the impact sent him skidding back, leaving a trench in the dirt, but Leo didn't fall. He planted his feet and charged again. Chelsea unleashed a storm of lightning, striking the beast's flank. The creature roared and turned toward her, its jaws glowing with energy as it prepared to unleash a blast. "Chelsea, move!" Carr shouted, leaping in front of her and slamming his spear into the ground. A glowing barrier formed just in time to deflect the blast, though the sheer force sent both of them tumbling back. Clover darted forward, striking at the beast's legs in a blur of motion. Each slash cut deep, but the creature's regenerative power sealed the wounds almost instantly. "TCH," Clover hissed, landing beside Leo. "It's healing too fast. We need to hit the core." Leo nodded, his crimson eye blazing even brighter. "Then we make an opening." The next minutes were chaos. Leo and Clover fought side by side, carving through the creature's armor like hide. Chelsea hurled wave after wave of magic, her voice ringing with incantations as the very air crackled with energy. Carr pinned the beast's movements with precise spear thrusts, forcing it to shift its weight and expose its weak points. Finally, Leo saw his chance. The creature reared back, exposing the glowing core within its chest for a fraction of a second. Leo's eyes widened. "Now!" He leapt, pouring every ounce of strength into a single strike. His blade cut through the air like a falling star and pierced the core. The explosion was blinding. A wave of golden and black energy erupted outward, tearing through the valley and flattening everything in its path. The creature let out a final, deafening roar before its body dissolved into black mist, leaving nothing but silence behind. When the dust settled, Leo stood in the center of the devastation, his sword buried in the ground, his chest heaving. Chelsea staggered to her feet, her face pale but determined. We actually did it." But Leo's expression was grim. "He wanted this," he said quietly. "He wanted me to use everything I had." Far away, the golden-eyed man stood atop a cliff, watching the faint glow on the horizon where the battle had taken place. He smiled. "Perfect. Now you're ready for the real fight." The chapter ends with Leo turning toward the horizon, his cloak whipping in the wind. His crimson eye glowed like fire as he whispered to himself, "This ends with him, one way or another." The valley was quiet now. Too quiet. Leo stood at the center of the battlefield, the last traces of black mist fading into the night sky. His sword was still in his hand, its golden glow slowly dimming. Chelsea approached carefully, her steps light on the cracked earth. "It's over," she said softly. Leo didn't look at her. His crimson eye still glowed faintly, scanning the horizon. "No," he said after a long pause. "It's only just beginning." The team gathered around. Carr leaned on his spear, sweat and blood streaking his face. If that thing was just one of them. He trailed off, shaking his head. Clover smirked faintly, though there was no humor in it. "Then we're in for a hell of a war." The stranger nodded gravely. "There are more seals, older, stronger. And now that one has been broken, the others will be easier to find." Leo finally sheathed his sword, the sound of steel sliding into the scabbard echoing in the still air. "Then we get to them first," he said. "Before he does. Before this world is swallowed by darkness." Chelsea met his gaze, determination hardening her features. "Then we're with you. Whatever it takes." As they began the long trek back to the academy, the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, bathing the battlefield in golden light. For a moment, everything was quiet, almost peaceful. Leo looked up at the sky, his crimson eye reflecting the rising sun. "I don't know how this ends," he thought to himself, "but I know one thing. I won't stop until it's over." Far away, in a fortress of black stone, the golden-eyed man stood before a map dotted with glowing marks, each one a seal yet to be broken. He smiled. "Let him chase me," he said softly. "Let him grow stronger. When the final seal falls, I'll be waiting." The chapter ends with Leo and his team silhouetted against the sunrise, walking toward the next battle. The wind carries Leo's final words, barely louder than a whisper. "This war isn't over. Not until one of us is gone, asterisk, and with that, we close this arc of legendary hero is an Academy honors student, but this is far from the end. The stakes are higher than ever, and Leo's journey is only just beginning. If you enjoyed this recap and want to follow the next chapters with us, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next battle, the next revelation, and the rise of Leo as the true hero this world needs, because if there's one thing this chapter made clear, The real war is still ahead. Asterisk.